Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another live stream. So we've got a really special one tonight, and we've got two heavyweights, not in weight, but heavyweights in terms of the industry and background, and I'm sure we'll delve into that later on. So as you can see the screen, we've got Jeremy Gay from Reef Builders. Hiya, Jeremy.
Good evening.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And
this is late for me, Paul. This is bedtime for me. I've normally knocked off for the day.
We'll poke you just in case you drop off. And then we've got Paul's a bit like buses. So Paul hadn't been on for about 2 years, and now he's been on 3 times in 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. But welcome as always.
Yeah,
it's almost like he's got something to promote.
No, trust me, I'm not doing it anymore after this. It's all over.
We're having a year off next year, Paul. I told you that.
Yeah.
Right. So tonight we've got a few things to cover. So we're going to say hellos in a minute to get that earlier than I usually do it. Then we're going to talk about a certain reefing event that's 2 weeks tomorrow. So not long until then. And then we're going to talk a little bit around Reef Builders, AAC, any questions that you have for either for Paul or Jeremy. So kind of get those in the chat, and we'll come back to those a little bit later if we may. So that's kind of it, really. So there's not much planned, and we'll just see how it goes. So what I'm going to do first of all, so Jeremy, what I usually do is go through the chat, say hello to the people that are there, and then we'll kind of crack on from there. So Tony, good evening to you, Tony. First in the house as you are so very often. So welcome. Hi, MK Reefer. Good to see you. And Daryl, Ali's back. I'm loving that that avatar as always. And hiya, Techers. Good evening to you. Johnny Boy, good evening to you as always. Loving the picture of the copper band. Hayley, hiya, Hayley. Haven't seen you for a while, but welcome back. And Stuart, good evening to you, Stuart. Just going through, got quite a few people talking to one another, which is always great to see. Hiya, John. Good to see you. Hiya, Rama. Angie's in the house to keep an eye on you, Paul. Hiya, Ange.
All right, Flange.
East Coast Reefer. Hiya, Steve. Good evening to you. Reef Rondo. Hiya. Hope you are well. And Reef 216. Loving that logo. Is that a Regal Angel? No, not a Regal Angel. A Regal 10, I think. See right in the middle there. UKM 120. Good evening to you. And hiya, Cole. Hope you're doing well.
Hi, Carl.
Hiya. And hiya, Jamie. Good evening to you. Yeah, 4 times 2. And Jez. Hiya, Yarrick. So hope you're doing well. I need to reach out to you because I went to send your ticket out for 2 weeks and it's been blocked. So I'll message you because we need to sort that out. So everyone who's going to the event in 2 weeks, all the tickets have gone out to those people that have bought tickets yesterday and this morning, just as a kind of FYI. And it could be in your junk because quite often emails go to junk. Hiya, Jupiter's Reef. Good evening to you. Hiya, Woody. Hope you are well. Hiya, Joe. Good evening.
Hi, Joe.
You. Norfolk Reefer. That's a really busy logo. Very nice.
I like it.
You get some really good logos because a lot of people use AI now. Yeah. So rather than paying, you can go into Chat GPT and do a new logo in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to put me out of a job. You can write better than me as well.
Yeah. Hiya, Cassie. Like that picture. Some nice corals going on there. I'm just going down. Economical Reefer. Good evening to you. Morgan's Reef. Hiya. And the Zoo, hopefully you're doing well, the Zoo. Good to see you. Surrey Reefer, good evening to you. And that's a picture of Oz, isn't it? So a long way from Surrey, but I like it and welcome. Hiya, Chris. Good evening to you. Would be a good time to ask you about when you're giving up a tank tour. So I'm on a Discord and Ron's on there and he wants me to do a tour. Well, I've got this tank and the others. I can't do Sundays. Sundays are a no-go for me on that kind of stuff. But let's try and sort something out. That would be good. Loving the seahorses, Paul.
Thanks, Carl.
My logo is the best on the scene. That's one thing Carl, you haven't changed. You might have had about 50 tanks, but I think your logo is pretty consistent for the last couple of years.
30 tanks in a month, but his logos remain the same.
Absolutely. And good evening to
Christian.
you,
Hello, Christian.
Hope you're well. You? And Ian Rodber. Hi, Ian.
Hello,
Ian. Good to see you. So we've got 52 people around. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And we have said hello to everyone. So other people come along. I'll try and say hello as we go along. So I think what we'll do now, if it's okay, we'll come over to you, Paul, in terms of the show. So I've got a little bit of a prompt there, just in case you can't remember everything. But I've got a bit of a banner going on there. So there'll be a lot of people I know that's in the chat that I know have bought tickets. So that's brilliant to see. But there may be some people that don't know about it, maybe joining for the first time. So yeah, the show, 26th of October.
Well, a little bit of background first, in case someone's doesn't know. I mean, I keep coming across people that still don't know. I've had a few messages actually, and in actual fact, it always seems to be our local customers that seem to miss out on these things. You'd think that they'd be well informed in the shop, but they're the last to know. But basically, it's just a relaxed reef meet. It's an idea that just very much Coral Freaks 2019 was. It's an experimental event. We experimented with the idea of a US style, but on a miniature scale, vendor type show, of which, of course, now, Paul, you hold the reins for that. We love to reef, mainly because I just don't have the time or capacity or brain or whatever to do it now, but it worked. And now we have vendor shows in the UK. And I think we'll see more and more and more of them, as we did with Aquahar. And I'm really pleased to see that it's starting to take off. You know, you have to give it a try. And I'll never forget Coral Freaks. I was so scared of pulling that off, the first one, that I made it a free event. But it was a huge gamble at the time, but it seemed to go down really well. You know, you make mistakes, you know, and I'm sure with this one coming up, you know, it's an amateur event. It's not a TV company putting it on with, you know, so this is just really a relaxed reef meet where you're going to hopefully meet up with your pals. That's the most important thing. And then we've got some really special people coming over, and really it's about, you know, where I go on my travels and I learn new things on my travels. I wanted to bring it over to here. The idea that you could interface with some of these YouTube greats like Fan Thien, who's honestly, I've been a lot of places. I've been to all the ones that we hear about, if you like, in America and elsewhere. Yeah. And honestly, I've never been anywhere quite as good as Fan Thien Tidal Gardens, honestly. I mean,
and you've been to WWC, you've been to Top Shelf.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Top Shelf is amazing. Top Shelf's if you said what would be the shop that I would aspire to, it would be Top Shelf, without a shadow of a doubt.
Told me.
Well, it's funny because I agree with a lot of what Jake said. Some didn't, but I did. And I would say that Top Shelf is the core essence of what I call a real serious. So first of all, they've got a good retail presence, shop store, and then of course they've got a great farm. And their farm, and in fact, I found this all across America. Actually, the shops are not much bigger than AAC. You know, even Worldwide Corals, you'd imagine it to be enormous, but it's not. And they've got two stores, one tiny one that's actually smaller than AAC, and one that's roughly about the same with the one that they started from, actually. So but what's astonishing with these places is that, first of all, displays. I mean, they're mind-blowing, the displays. The effort that they put into them is just a fantastic. And I was very lucky at Worldwide for Vic let us, with Tony Vargas, have a look at the top down, you know, and they're there. And then of the main display, but their farms are just astonishing. They really are. But Top Shelf is, I believe, one of the best aquaculture retail establishments, I would call it. They also had, which is rare in America, pretty healthy fish. Fish seem to be. I think we're really spoiled. I've mentioned this before on live streams. You know, fish. In the UK and Europe, you'll see better fish than you'll see in America.
So why is that, Paul? Because when I look on Live Aqua, I think it is, the price of the fish in America seem really, really expensive compared to the UK.
Well, you say that, but you know what? If you just think at the minute where America is and how vast it is and how big it is, and then you think of the UK where that is on the world map. Now try and imagine that most of the fish that we see come from the Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
And we're actually right dead center to receive fish. And so our flight times from, say, Kenya, for example, 4 to 6 hours. Obviously, the airport at Heathrow cocks that up by about 5 hours. But the reality is that we're very, very lucky. We're sort of dead center of where we sort of need to be in the world of marine ornamentals, without a shadow of a doubt. However, when it comes to Pacific fish, that's when things in America get cheaper. So a flame angel
way, Paul.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, basically, to get a flame angel to the UK, we've got a flight from the Marshall Islands to LA to Heathrow, somewhere like that. Right. And since, of course, the Hawaii ban, where we can't transit fish through Hawaii. So originally, a lot of people think that flame angels come from Hawaii. Well, they do a few. Rarely, they used to. But most of the flame angels come out of somewhere like the Marshalls, and they used to land them into Hawaii and then bounce them on to direct from Hawaii to Heathrow. Now the fish. So the reason why your flame angels look ridiculous prices on the glass at the minute is purely because they're having to do 2 stopovers, if you like. You know, they look Marshall Islands over to LA, unpacked, repacked, sent back to the UK again. So there's going to be an extra cost there. But the majority of the fish, of course, that we're seeing in most UK stores are either Indian Ocean or Indo-Pacific in that region. So, you know, that's why. And of course, the Red Sea is literally on our doorstep. I mean, in terms of coral reefs, you don't get much better than that. You can fly most of the way around the world, but you still won't see a coral reef that's probably as intact as you will in parts of the Red Sea region. So we're very, very lucky like that. But in going back to what we're talking about, you know, the inspiration for Freaks 2019 was a little bit of, you know, the hobbyists said that they wanted it. I thought I'd give it a try with, and I'm going to name drop here actually, because we mustn't lose sight of the fact that it wasn't completely my idea. The name Coral Freaks is my idea. However, it was very much Steve Reef Dreams. Yeah. So if anyone remembers, Reef Dreams was a fantastic, you know, for me, Reef Dreams was a fantastic store, and which I truly miss. Great stores in the UK
I never got to go there. One of the very few I've never been to.
Yeah. Me and Steve and Sean used to battle it out in wholesalers, but we became great friends. So it would be a question of who could nick the corals before each other. You know, and there was an ongoing, we got on absolutely fantastic, me and Steve. You know, there was never any sort of competition elements or anything like that past trying to steal the corals, you know. You know, so Steve Reef Dreams was fundamental in bringing around this idea of Coral Freaks, and they even developed the first website. However, this particular Coral Freaks, another name I'll drop, I discussed with Laura, possibly around about Laura Carlin from Eco Marines, around about a year or so ago. And I said, why don't we come up with a alternative type thing? You know, rather than call it a talk or talks, which I know we include in Love to Reef, how about just putting your bum on a chair, sitting back and being part of that podcast? Because, you know, there's been many a time I've watched a podcast and I've sort of wished that I could ask a question to that person. Yeah. So the idea was, why not bring them over? Why not try and bring some really knowledgeable people over that I have a lot of respect for, that I know that UK hobbyists will really gain an insight. You know, Fan is a consummate, he's an absolute, how can I put it? He's the most perfect, he's the #1 perfectionist, without a shadow of a doubt. So you've got not only his YouTube channel, which is probably the best that there is in terms of production and gloss
quality.
And of course, I did originally want March to come, and you never know, with March he might turn up. No, so I wanted the rock and roll YouTuber who just point shoots and films, and then I wanted Fan originally. So those two, because they're both opposite ends of the scale in terms of YouTube and how they do it, you know. But then of course Tony, I see Tony ideally, you know, normally me and Tony Vargas catch up at least once a year. I went to his last year out in Qatar. Tony's one of those old school reef keepers. He was there from the start, very much like David Saxby. Appeared on Channel 4 years ago with a program called Fishy Business. You know, so Tony and Tony, the reason why I love Tony is he'll argue all day long with David. Yeah. So those two are like husband and wife.
Funny,
they're all, they're just honestly. So I wanted, and I know that David's coming as well. So those two together are funny as you like, that they really are. Of course, Jamie Craggs. I mean, he's going to be there on the 26th. And for me, Jamie is our link from science to the hobby. You know, we've got to give the respect to these sorts of people.
Jamie is a great British export. I speak to the Americans every day, and they're all obsessed with him. You know, we're talking about Than, Tony, all the heroes, Jake. Their hero from overseas is Jamie Craggs, and he was in the papers today actually because he's just bred. I think it's a native sea fan.
Yeah, it's the pink.
I saw that.
Sea fan, which he used oyster feast to feed him. I thought I'd get that. All right, it was actually oyster feast that he managed to help bulk them out to produce their eggs. But and also while we're mentioning Jamie, something I've mentioned, which I know Jeremy introduced me to recently, we mustn't forget that there's always a Jamie, but there's always a Mike Sweet.
Sweet.
I wish Mike Sweet was coming. I don't think he can make it. But Mike Sweet and Jamie, I mean, Mike taught some of what Jamie knows, so we must give him some credit there as well. There's always there's always a good woman behind a good man, and there's always behind a coral spawner. There's always someone else. You know, there's always people learn from everyone. You know, so I thought and then we got Pat and Trina now. They're people that in the trade, particularly in America and Canada, are known very, very well. But in the UK, I don't think too many people know them. Dealers will know who Pat Foster is, but not many hobbyists will. And the thing with Pat is that he is the most knowledgeable guy when it comes to fish you'll ever meet. I mean, he's taught me some little secrets that I had no idea. I mean, like I say, every day's a school day and we're learning every day. And some of the things that Pat's taught me, and likewise, I'm helping him with his seahorse breeding over in Canada right now. But he's just, honestly, he's like a book. And then, of course, because he's like a book, Ecotech decided to invest an awful lot of their time with Pat and Trina at Reef Wholesale in Canada, which is around about, I suppose, about an hour from the American border and probably another hour and a half down to Pennsylvania, where Ecotech originally was. But that's where the first coral lab was ever really set up, because Pat had set up 3 aquariums whereby that he had the Ecotech radium, which of course is used in coral spawning and what have you as well. And Pat did all the tests for AB+, but I'm not going to say too much about that because I know that's one of the subjects that Jeremy wants to discuss in the show. Yeah. So 26th of October, light-hearted, friendly event, social reef meet. Come and say hi to your pals you talk to all the time, no doubt, on WhatsApp or online, and do it in person, because I believe face-to-face is far more powerful than doing everything on YouTube, WhatsApp and Instagram. You know, I think it's really important for people's mental health to socialise and meet up, and that's where we're at with it. So experimental, so bear with us. I'm hoping it all goes well.
Brilliant. And where can people get tickets from, Paul?
AAC online, you can get them there, or if you really want to and you can't be bothered with that, you can either pop in the store, just pick up a slip of which, or you can just call up and we'll organise it over the phone if need be. But I was going to say, actually, Paul, a couple of things before we really get going with Jeremy and what have you. Thank you so much, Paul, for helping me with this. particularly with the ticket side of things and carrying on with Love to Reef, because I doubt that I'll probably ever really do another vendor show. I'm not saying that we'll ever necessarily do another Freaks unless I'm pushed into it as such. So really, it's just another idea, which I hope other people take up. The idea being, you don't have to have a vendor show. They are really complicated. They're real brain damage, as you know, Paul, to pull off. I mean, lots of worry, lots of stress. But the idea of this is you park your bum on a chair, you have a sandwich, have something to eat, have a chat. And the idea of this a reefing audience is a very relaxed event.
Yeah.
As long as you're
and
there
we
all
want
the
people
time.
to chip in as well. We want to have a laugh. We've all got a sense of humour. Sometimes we take it all too seriously. It's only fish keeping. And although it joins us together, we're all human beings, and hopefully we'll just have a good day out. Really informal. You get to meet these guys that you normally only see on your laptop, and it'll be good for everyone. It'll be a great day.
Yeah, and the nice thing is these people as well, as I said, I mentioned this before when Tom was last on, these people are human. Is sometimes you can look at someone online like Fan and, and you think, oh, I'm never going to meet him. I'm never going to say what I want to say. I'm never going to say, but these people are just like me and you. They're no different. They had a serious amount of passion like I did, and they just dedicated their entire lives to it. That's what it was. So
Fan wears a suit the whole time.
But Fan does. Apparently, one of the questions I've asked Jeremy, because and that's another thing actually, if there are people out there that have got, either funny questions or light-hearted questions, doesn't have to be super serious, But there's a question that me and Jeremy, because Jeremy asked me when we were sat together plotting the show the other day, and the one thing I've never asked him was, does he wear a suit when he's fragging?
Yeah. Does he wear a suit when he's taking out a dead enemy?
Because he's honestly, when I turned up with March, I mean, he was dressed. He's always dressed amazingly. But I did know a guy up north in Leicester, Youssef, which I'm sure Jeremy knows. He was a great guy. Clearwater Aquatics at Leicester. There was a guy called Youssef, which sadly died, unfortunately. But he used to wear a shirt and a tie, and he used to turn up at TMC and roll his shirt sleeves up before he get his squirrels out. So there was one other guy that I know. Maybe I'll take the idea up.
What, you in a suit?
Yusuf was another pioneer. We were talking about pioneers. This is probably for another episode, but Yusuf was a real pioneer in reef keeping. Don't get me wrong. I could keep marines before, but it was him that I'd go to and talk about phosphate, KH, T5, live sand, acros, all that stuff. And that was 25 years ago.
Yeah, amazing guy. So anyway, that's the long and short of it. Do you want me to, Paul, to just sort of mention how the day will go on the thing?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, and then we'll go into the comments after.
Don't give the secret away, though, Paul. Paul, don't give the secret away.
This is semi-secret, but I'm just sort of going to give people a little flavour of how the day, I hope, will go. I'm sure it will not go exactly the same, but we've got it's basically what's changed is that we're going to have to start at 10 a.m. So originally it was sort of around about 10:30, 11, but me and Jeremy had to slap me around the face the other day and say, "Are you joking? We've got this much to do." So we're gonna open the doors at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll have time to grab. I'm providing tea and coffee and drinks and all that, so you don't need to worry. We're going to get that organised. When you come in, you hopefully have some skits and some bits and pieces. Then ideally, we need you all sat down at about 10:15, 10:20 latest, really. It's making your way. So grab a drink, go into the main hall, get your seat, sit down, around about 10:45. We're going to, 10:30, 10:45. Jeremy, myself, and of course you, Paul, we're going to do a little introduction to what it's all about. And then we're going to get our first two guests out. And then Jeremy and I have decided at the moment that we can't tell you who those first two guests are, because first of all, we've got to discuss it with them. And obviously there'll be some nerves. I mean, Than, I'll be honest with you, is not particularly confident, despite his appearance, as standing up in front of people. He's done it, He even once told me that he wouldn't do a talk or anything like that. This was years ago, but things have happened with Reef Builders, and I think he's got more confident and what have you. You know, now
it's hard to book him though. Reef Builders say that as well. It's not easy to get fan, Paul. So you've done really well.
Yeah, nice. I know. I brainwashed him, I think. And then, and also, yeah, I have to say, actually, the reason why I got Fan, we mustn't forget again, is Laura and Fan have been years forever. Laura introduced Fan to me. He came to the first Coral Freaks, and no one
didn't he? Yeah.
And I didn't even really know he was properly at the time. And there's bound to be people watching this right now that knew about Fan long time before I did, because I was relatively late to reefing YouTube, if you like, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I met him. I liked him. We got on, and March, of course, told me so many great things about him and said to me, "You've got to go and see his place," you know. And he weren't wrong either. It just blew my mind. And hopefully, Jeremy's going to extract some of that out of him, right? Yeah. Because by the way, Fan's place is the best you'll ever see. It's the Giorgio Armani of the reefing world. But he will tell you that it's rubbish. He's never happy. He's like any good reef keeper, they're never happy with whatever they've got. You're always striving to do more. So we don't know who's on first of all. We've got to discuss it with various guests as to who would like to be on. But me and Jeremy have got a rough idea of how we would like to do it. So that lasts from 10:45 till 12 o'clock. Then we've got a special award that we're going to be giving out to someone, which we're not going to name now, but he's a special guy in the UK reef keeping fraternity and trade. We've got a very special award, really special actually, and I hope that everyone will give him plenty of encouragement as well. Then at 12 o'clock to about 12:45, we've got an interval. I've made sure that we've all got a sandwich and something to eat, maybe a can of beer or two, maybe a soft drink or whatever, a tea and coffee again. So I've organised gluten-free, if you're gluten-free, vegetarian, if you're I've tried to cover it all. Yeah. So the CAF are going to organise some free food as part of your ticket price. Nice. Then at 12:45, we need to take our bums on seats again. And then Jeremy will lift off with the 1 to 2 p.m. the other two guests. And then we'll be moving for a short break about 2 o'clock, 2:15 for a wee, a smoke, or whatever you need to do. And then at 2:15 to 3:45, this is the hobbyist time. And it's really important, this, because this is your chance to do what I really want it to be about, which is your chance to raise your questions. Yeah. To get a chance to be part of this podcast. By the way, it's all going to be filmed, I believe. I've been reliably informed that Steph, the Yorkshire reefer, is going to film it for us and distribute that film to Jeremy, yourself, Paul, and anyone else who's helped us along the way, so that you can share it on your YouTube videos and YouTube and what have you. And we'll have all the guests on at this stage. So there'll be all, just like a Jonathan Ross show, with Jeremy being Jonathan Ross, all 4 guests. Yeah. Will then be sat down and you'll be able to fire off your questions. You know, and it don't matter what the questions are. You know, Fang, do you wear a suit if we don't get around it during your Fang? It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be complex. And this was something which I took from this live stream, particularly, Paul, what I've always loved about the live stream on a Friday night. Jeremy and me can listen to the in-depth knowledge of pH any time of the week. But what we really love, and what I'm going to miss, I don't want to get too emotional because I know it's all, but I really love this Friday night live stream, watching you, Jay, Mogsy, and Tom, and everyone that's been on it. It's been a really special moment. I mean, I told you the other day, I wasn't sure at first. Yeah. You know, because I'm a bit of a train spotter. But in the end, you realise that ultimately what you want sometimes when it comes to reef keeping is a light-hearted view. And this is where I've took some of that inspiration for this reefing audience with the podcast, the live stream. Let's do it in the hall. Let's do it with our pals. Let's enjoy it together, you know, and make it something really special. It's an intimate event. It's a small event. It's going to be about 100 odd people, 150 people. So it's not going to be, it's like seeing, if you like them, I don't know if you don't, if you like, it's like seeing Oasis in a small church hall. You know, this is what it's going to be like. So, you know, that's what, as I say, really, it's, I'm surprised actually, because we've sold quite well ticket wise recently, but it was a little bit slow on the uptake. And I thought that's a bit odd, you know, because this is, you know, people always telling me about they want events, they want to do this, they want to do that. But ultimately, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. And ultimately, as you'll see, it's not always a quick uptake, as Aquahar found out, of which I was part of originally.
Well, I had that with Love to Reef all 3 years, where it's like 50, 100, 200 people. You get that initial rush, and then there's a lull.
Yeah.
And then it comes back. And I've said before on here, the worst bit of doing Love to Reef is not the organising the vendors, and you know, because that was put together in 3 weeks, the principle, so it was really quick. Selling the tickets is such a challenge. And as you know, I had my Facebook account, there was problems. So selling the tickets is the hardest thing to do of any event.
Well, the worst thing I found out, because of course this is about bums on seats, providing sandwiches and food and catering, and all of that. So basically, I need to know what the numbers are leading right up to the last minute, so I can make sure that everyone's got a chair, everyone's got a sandwich, everyone's got this. So I thought it was going to be less complicated than a vendor show, but there has still been quite a lot of worry and quite a lot of stress about it. But you know, I'm hoping that people really, more than anything, see it for what it is. It's a chance to meet your pals. And by the way, we've got some really lovely, fantastic superstar reef keepers coming. Yeah. But really, it's more of a question of about, you know, oh, hello, mate, I haven't seen you for years. You know, oh, how are you getting? You know, that sort of thing. And I do know already that a few of the original Ultimate Reefers, for example, Pav, for example, Pavlo from Ultimate Reef is coming. I think Martin Lakin's coming as well. I know David Sachs, because we're going to see a few of the old school boys as well as the new school boys, you know, so it's going to be really, really fun. Basically, the raffle and the close around about sort of 4 p.m. sort of time, 3:45. And what I really want to stress is, if you know, please put your hand in your pocket for the raffle. Every single penny from that raffle is going to go to Mind mental health charity.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And of course, every ticket we've sold, £5 of which, this is keeping it in. This is all down to you and Jay, Paul. Every single ticket, £5 of that goes back to your Love to Reef Mind account, where I know that your work, they had a percentage, didn't they, or something?
They had 500 last time. We'll have to see if they can do that again. That doesn't go, so it goes in the Just Giving fund, so everyone can see that, but they pay it direct. So the firm I work for, each year you can claim X amount of money for the fundraisers that you do. So they do a pound for pound match up to up to £500. So Love to Reef, the last 3 years, it hasn't gone through the kind of GoFundMe page or whatever one I use, I can't remember now, but they add some money in there. So that kind of money goes to the charity as well, which is great. So it's a bit of a top up on that, which is fantastic. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And actual fact, I've because of recent things that have happened and what have you, I've actually contacted our local Mind charity sort of agent, if you like. Yeah, and I'm trying to see whether she will attend, because I think that this is again down to you and Jay and what have you. That you know, and I didn't realise how many people I've met, and including situations for myself and what have you. How many people really, you know, affected in some respects. And I think after talking to people recently since COVID. I know Jay was telling me only recently on Instagram, he was telling me about the school kids and adolescents that have suffered since COVID. And I know that even Dylan, there was a few moments with my son as well. A lot of adolescents have suffered. And I've never realised, I never gave mental health a second look myself, to be honest with you, ever, until recently. And it's really become a prominent part of this show as well. So I want people to be aware that reef keeping, in actual fact, is an escape. If you really think about it, we're escaping into this world of our own little magical world. And you know, for many hobbyists, it's an escape away from their stresses of their daily working life. And that in itself is why I think that, I mean, Mind is a really important thing to donate to. I'm sure there's plenty of other mental health charities out there I've been looking at. But of course, this one, I think we'll stick with the Love to Reef idea and the ideas that you've embellished within Love to Reef, which is why I always said right from the go, Coral Freaks is the idea engine. But, you know, the ideas coming from Coral Freaks, but really Love to Reef, I believe, is where we'll end up. And that is really the future, I think, of these little smaller, more intimate events that you're organising, Paul. And then the only other thing I thought I'd mention, it depends on whether we get enough to. So I know that you said to me, Paul, about AAC being open early and later. I think, Jeremy, you said too, didn't you, Jeremy?
Yeah.
I mean,
prefer, you know, we want to give people a chance to visit your shop, Paul, because if you haven't been before, you know, it's worth going. Two, you're not going to take 5 minutes in there. You're going to want a good look around. So I think the idea is to give them a chance before and afterwards and during lunch.
Yeah, well, I spoke to the staff because obviously, although, you know, I'm governor, you know, I still got to make sure my team are happy about the idea. And Barry tells me that, and the staff have all said yes, they will, without any hesitation. So we're going to keep the shop open till 6 p.m. on that day. So there's no real reason for people to feel they're going to miss out. You know, I've done it before where people think they're going to miss out, so they bomb the shop first thing in the morning, and I get out like a coral halfway through the day. So, you know, it's the idea will be that, you know, the shops, in some respects, though, really, quite honestly, I'm not that bothered. I know that sounds wrong.
But I think people are, though, Paul. It's part of the experience that you think about Love to Reef and all of those. Part of it is, and we saw that Love to Reef as people ebb and flow throughout the day, they'll disappear and they go to the shop. Now, of course, at Love to Reef, you can do that because there's time to do this. So I think, as we said, you need that time at the beginning, a little bit in the middle and at the end, because whilst you say not bothered, people love to come into the shop. I know that's kind of Love to Reef. You know, if they'll come to Love to Reef or whatever, and it's great. I can see AAC at the same time, so it makes a whole day of maybe a 2, 3, 4 hour journey for people. That it's not just a visit; they've got, you know, a load of thing that they can do as well as mixing with other people. So I think it is a big thing for people that I speak to, that it's on the doorstep and part of the experience. Go on, Jeremy.
And sorry, after a day of talking about corals, you're going to want to look at some and buy some. You know, you're going to want to get involved. You know, it's, you know, a day of just super enthusiasm with these experts that Paul's brought over. People are going to be running in the store.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, what we'll try and do, I think, is, you know, if people can be understanding. I've only got a team of 6 to 8 people. You know, if 100 people come flying through the door, we can, you know, it's going to be hard. But what Barry said is before, what he's done before at Love to Reef is, if you want something, we'll put a ticket with the coral with your name on. You pay for it, and then you can come and collect it afterwards.
Oh, brilliant.
Right. So we're going to do that. We don't normally do that, but we're going to do it because we know that people might want to do that. And then, so what I would suggest is that you don't think we're going to ever run out. We never run out of anything. Jeremy can guarantee that. He sees what's behind the scenes. We never run out. So there's, you know, of stuff. But also we're open till 6 p.m. So from 4 till 6 p.m, it will give people the opportunity. But remember, can we also be a little bit polite? In other words, if you are halfway through a talk or something like, you know, if you are going to sneak off quietly or something like that, we're going to give everyone bands so they can come and go through, through the door. So everyone have an armband. But like, if we can remember, this isn't a vendor show where you can come and go all the time. You know, so if we can remember, if the people are talking, just be quiet if you want to leave or something like that, or you want to pop back in or what have you. You know, just out of, you know, because that can obviously throw people off conversation and things like that. So the idea being we'll open at 9 at the shop. The show kicks off at 10. 12:45, you can grab a quick sandwich. Well, there we go. Gill's Aquarium. What time do we need it to be ideally? Well, I would say if you want to get parked safely, by the way, please park safely. If you want to get, I would say any time from sort of 9:30, if you want 9:45, that sort of time. Don't block the shop up, because obviously we've got the regular customers coming. We usually cone it off, and you'll be directed away to the front car park anyway. But if you can be mindful of where you're parking and park sensibly, to be fair, Paul, at Love to Reef, that's not been an issue, is it? It's been
no,
great.
before I usually send out an email saying, park round by the main car park. Make sure you stay in the lines, because you get traffic wardens and they get a little bit overzealous if you park across more than one space.
Yeah, there's funny
plenty
like
of space for everyone. Because if you're looking around how many tickets you sell, there's plenty of space.
There's 220 spaces, and even at 150, you shouldn't have an issue. But if you try and remember, there are other businesses operating, and just be a little bit. Don't come round to AAC and park in the front car.
It's actually easier around the front, Paul.
It is easier.
It's less of a walk around the front than going from your shop. To be fair,
I know. Yeah. So that's the idea. And I think really that sort of wraps it up. The idea. So we'll open at 9. You'll have like sort of 45 minutes really, where you can have a quick zip round AAC, have a quick look, get back over for ready to see you and Jill. And I think I've got Connor's girlfriend, Sophie, helping and things on the door to get people through the door quickly. Grab yourself a tea, a coffee, make your way to your seats, go and find yourself somewhere to sit. And then hopefully we'll all kick off about 10:30 and say break around about 12 o'clock. Till 1:15, and then another small break about 2 o'clock as well, and then a finish at about 3:45, 4 o'clock. Brilliant. That's the idea. That's the plan. No doubt it won't work.
Well, we'll try and keep it on track for sure. So there's so I'm going to go to the bottom comments, because there's some related to what you said. Then I'm going to go back to all the talk. There's a couple of questions and a couple of bits I want to cover off. So if you could hit the like button, that'd be brilliant. Darren's saying 9:30, 9:40, which makes sense. This is relation to mental health and reef keeping. Yeah, you're so right, Paul. Keep me out of trouble. The only thing is, I do wonder about this. When you're struggling with your tank and you got dinos and you got Aptasia and stuff like that, it doesn't feel the most relaxed hobby.
It's not. And try working in a store with 10,000 fish and 200 tanks and 200 customers with dinos.
It hasn't done my mental health any good, I can promise you. But I do know a lot of people it does help.
I know. I get the principle. When it's going swimmingly well, and the problems I've had this. At the moment, this tank, I'm absolutely loving it. But some of the issues I've had this tank, I'm thinking mental health doesn't exactly keep me on the straight and narrow of the stress levels. But I get what you're saying for sure. On that, Hayley, thanks for sharing that around helping me through my grief after losing my mum. It's more than just a fish tank. Absolutely. I totally agree with you on there. AAC, brilliant shop. Been one, best one I've been to. Thank you. Can't wait to get a snail. I'm sure you can get some snails.
I'll save you one, Carl. I promise it'll be the best trucker snail you've ever bought.
Be an empty shell.
I'll keep you to that. AOC, amazing shop, top class. Yeah, exactly. It's a wider community and chats like these that help for many reasons. Absolutely. Have you got any of those large hermits? Jez, that's this one.
I think I probably have.
100% staying the night. Yes, I know. I think Tom's staying. I think Christian's down as well. I think there's a few people that are staying in the Green Man, if I remember rightly. I know there's a few people that are staying. I'll leave the van in the middle of the road with the beacon on. As a request, have you sorted my dedicated motorcycle parking yet, Paul?
I think there's an area anyway where people can park their bikes, but if not, he can park it right by reception doors. I'm sure no one will say anything. Yeah.
More parking up the ramp on a main car park. Yeah, absolutely. And then off to the pub. Paul, don't bite your fingernails on live. No. I think that's referring to me or you. Paul, no vape tonight, because I know people are usually interested in what flavour you've got. What flavour you got tonight?
That's why he's biting his fingernails.
Blue Raz Lemonade.
Oh, it's been the Coke one recently. I say Coca-Cola recently.
Yeah, please be careful, Paul, how you say that. I don't need no pipes, trust me. Yeah. Blue Raz Lemonade, it is tonight. Thank you, John.
Sounds like a coral name.
Absolutely. An AAC one.
Oh, Blue Raz Lemonade. That sounds good, doesn't it?
There we go.
First.
There we have it. Spending time in AAC keeps me on an even keel. Absolutely. Maybe not good for your pockets. Maybe it's good for your mental health. Paul has a habit of taking your money and then you say thank you. I don't know how that happens, but it happens all the time. It's one of the skills of your staff and you of the candy shop.
That's why he wants 200 people in one room. He's going to hypnotize all of them. Like Paul McKenna.
Absolutely. It's helping me get through this crap time at home. Just sit there sometimes watching it. Hardly turn on the TV anymore. Absolutely. It does. I'm
missing EastEnders here.
Oh dear. Main problem moving to Surrey, not being able to get to AAC. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
come on, Luke.
I drove there from Southport, Luke. 250 miles,
Luke,
5 hours.
Luke was a regular, and I miss him. I haven't seen him for a long time. Great, really into his acros and all of that. In fact, he encouraged me. He was the first guy, Luke was, to encourage me. He said that I'd be, why don't you do YouTube? And I went, oh no, I don't want to do that. And it was Luke, actually. And then Luke was also so transfixed on the American sort of view. But Luke's, get down here, you lazy bastard. That's it. He's Surrey. Do you see what I mean? In America, they travel 300 miles.
Get a taxi.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, we went to Holland and back in a day, didn't we? We left at 2 o'clock in the morning and got back at 2 o'clock in the morning. That was a trip and a half for a show for Bavarian, wasn't it? 2 years ago.
Yeah, with Winston. That was good, wasn't it? That was funny. That was funny.
I mean, it was brilliant, you know, the whole day. Yeah. It was a good trip, and that's a lovely show for Bavarian.
Do you remember Winston driving that woman next to him on the plane, mad on the way home?
Yeah, I do. Well, Winston would drive anyone mad anyway. Yeah.
Oh, he's funny. He's funny.
He is. He's a character. Yeah. But there we go. Ian's saying me and Ben are staying down, so that'd be good.
Very good.
Haley, fighting Aptasia is easy, and then some non-salty issues. Absolutely.
Well, I read about a fish today that ate Aptasia, and you wouldn't believe what it was.
Go on then.
Regal angelfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, says Paul. He already no, he didn't. Yeah, regal angelfish. Wouldn't eat anything, and then the guy got it on sponges, and then Aptasia, and then it was an absolute Aptasia ninja, like trained. Yeah. Put it in a tank. Got them all.
Griffiths angels eat Majano and enemies.
Yeah, more interesting.
But shall I tell you how I know? Because one of my beautiful soft coral displays used to have a Griffiths eye angel in it, which went to Ian Pollock, actually. I don't know if he watches this. Yeah. Anyway, when I took it out, because I wanted to experiment with some different corals, because I knew he was eating the odd one.
He ended up as well.
He was eating anyway. As soon as I took him out, a Majano and enemy explosion happened.
Yeah.
So Regal Angel, eh?
Regal Angel, Aptasia.
That's good to know. It's easier than some of the other things that you can use.
Don't take my word for it, though.
Oh, no, when you've said it, it's become the truth. Jeremy said that's what it'll be.
Jeremy,
I only read it. This guy said it was true.
Says buy Regal Angels instead of copper band butterflies and kill them instead.
And if it doesn't, you'll get trolled, Jeremy.
I love a Regal. Red Sea Regal, that's my favourite.
Oh, it's lovely.
Oh, nice.
Pear. I want a pear. We can dream.
I don't think that'll go well in your Max Nano behind you, though, Jeremy. You'll have
with my 10 yellow tangs?
You have to have the police around, won't you? Your tang and your angel police.
Exactly.
But there we go. Right. My tank is only 3 months old and it's already given me white hairs.
Yeah.
It can get easier. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with good manners. Absolutely. Is Paul the same person done a YouTube video on the Red Sea Max Nano in his shop?
Yes.
You did, didn't
MPS tank. It's done. I think Red Sea shared it.
Yeah, it was actually one of my best viewed videos, but I thought it was rubbish. But there you go.
It's the tank. It's lovely. And what you got in it?
Yeah, soft corals and wire corals and that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's the one that's on the counter.
We did a series. Yeah, we did a series. It was the Max Peninsula. And it went down quite well, actually, that one. Yeah. Right.
Excellent. Drippy, hiya Drippy. You won't be surprised to know I get a reward from my work as I've been so amazing since they started. £100 voucher for AAC. Oh dear. I'm sorry, no excuses. Absolutely. Is Winston going? No, Winston's left the hobby, hasn't he? And
you never know.
Or you think he might turn up?
You never know. Yeah, he's still. Do you know what it was for Winston? Honestly, if Winston's actually quite a good example to use of about a social interaction with people, because Winston still sends me messages now. Anytime you want to go on the road, Paul, give us a shout. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
he loved the reef keeping community. He loved the meets. You know, when he goes to Reef Palooza, I've been there while he's been there. He literally can't be asked to look at any corals or nothing. He's only there to say hello to Julian, say hello to him, say hello to him. He just likes meeting up with people, just like at Vivarium, Paul. He's more interested in the social interaction. He's all the way down in Hastings. He's got a few reef keeping pals down there, and he still meets up with his reef keeping pals even to this day. Yeah, and I reckon it won't be long before Winston's back.
What, another tank? Because he sold everything, didn't he? But he does that anyway. He used to sell it.
You can't leave the hobby once you're in.
No, he didn't sell everything.
Oh, didn't he?
He's still got a loft full of gear. That's what I think. I reckon he'll be back. He'll get bored one day. He's dreaming of a Moorish idol always. But he likes to.
They're easy now.
Yeah, he likes travelling a lot. And that was the thing. So, you know, he likes the idea, but he loves a reef keeping event. He thought, do you remember him at Coral Freaks 2019 when he won a bottle of Waste Away?
Nice.
Do you remember that, Paul?
That was the perfect gift for him. He'd have picked up a fuss, but it was funny.
Yeah, that was Aaron's Aquarium. When it brilliant, you know, he was so good. When Michael Aarons, when he was so good, and then he said, "Come on down, Winston. You've won a bottle of what?" He went, "Oh my god!" You know, he was so disappointed when
he thought he had something TikTok.
Because he put about 50 quid into the raffle when he won this bottle of kit. That was it.
He thought he'd get a Radiant, and he got a bottle of gunk clearer.
Yeah.
That is a good link though, because there are some good prizes at this show. And we're not talking about the Waste Away.
Oh, I forgot to say. Yeah, actually, I need to give a big shout out actually for a couple of people. Well, actually, a few now. In actual fact, 4. Right, so I need to update the raffle side of things. Aperture, which are, of course, the umbrella company for Neptune, Ecotech, and all of these, have absolutely spoilt us on this. I don't know if I really should. I say, Jeremy, what some of the prizes are. Should I just give them a little taste or not?
Yeah, right. Because it will make people want to buy tickets. I'd buy a ticket.
Right. Well, first of all, there's a straight away. So this is down to Exodus. So Jez from Exodus, along with Steve Fox, of pressured Aperture, and managed to screw out of them a full Apex Pro.
Nice.
Which is 1,000 quid.
That's decent.
That's the top range of all the trimmings, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best one you can get. I mean, it's
A3 Pro.
A3 Pro. I mean, that's
Energy
got it all.
Bar, probes, everything.
It's also got the level sensors, and I'll tell you when.
Liquid level sensors.
The liquid level sensors are fantastic because you can have them on your return pump section. So wherever you are in the world, if you know that your return pump section's changed, either your ATO's not working or something's gone really wrong. So like the level sensors, the first point of call to let you know. So the Apex Pro is brilliant. We've got an XR15 Radiant and tank mount, or if you want a wire kit, you can have that as well. God, I'm trying to remember now. I know that through D&D, they've organised, I think it's an AI Orbit or 2 or something like that, some AI Orbit. NIOS have been really kind as well. They've I've been experimenting with NIOS salt on the new coral farm and the seahorse facility. I've tested it for about 6 months. 13 years worth of research went into NIOS salt. And they're the boys have, they'll never see their money back. I mean, they've spent God knows how much money on Nile salt in order to make Nile salt what it is today. I mean, I reckon they're a 10-year plan, a 10-year business plan, because the amount of money, in fact, Jez was telling me, no one is allowed to film in Nios where they make the salt.
Fair enough.
They've got a secret. So, you know, every salt company has its secrets, but they're really strict about it. And I've even heard that some of the competition have tried sneaking in there to try and look at the salt. And then today I heard as well about Red Sea. Red Sea have very kindly been in touch with me. I mean, I've not had a chance to talk to the guys at Red Sea much, but they heard about this event. They know it's about mental health as well, this raffle thing. You know, there's not any money coming to AAC or anything like that. And Red Sea have kindly donated, I think it's a Red Sea Reef Mat 500. I will be, on behalf of Reef Casa, March's brand, donating a flat 10 light and frag rack. So the next time there's a little vendor show and you fancy giving it a go as a hobbyist, I've got the perfect little tank. It will fit about 100 frags in it that you could take to a vendor show. So I'm going to throw that in. Angela, that obviously runs the reef nutrition element of AAC, the distribution on that, she's going to be putting together a prize for reef nutrition as well. And they're coming in all the time. So I'm sure that we always do a voucher, Paul, don't we, for Love to Reef and all the rest of it for AAC. So cool. I think Jay won the voucher, didn't he, one year, didn't he?
He got loads of abuse, and I got accused of cheating because Jay won it. And he was to put it back. Yeah. But, I'm going to have to tell the trade that they can put their money in for the raffle tickets, but they're not allowed to have raffle tickets. but the thing I'm going to mention with Winston came up with a fantastic idea, which was like they do at Reef Palooza, whereas you normally get raffle tickets and you think, oh, I don't really want to win that prize, or really, I've already got lights. I wanted just the reef nutrition or a bucket of salt, say, right. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the raffle up so you've got a bucket in front of each prize, so that when you get your raffle tickets, you can put your ticket in whatever prize you wish to win, so that there's no waste. We don't want the idea of someone, I don't really want a light, I wanted a Neptune. So we're going to make it a little like the Americans do at these reef shows. You get a choice to put your tickets in whatever bucket you want to put them in. You might want to put a ticket in each bucket if you've got many tickets. But if you want to go, I want to really win that Radian, I'll put all my tickets in there. We've got greater odds, haven't you? So that's the idea as well. We're going to try and do something along those lines. That'd be a bit different. So that'd be good. Fantastic. Right, I'm just going to go for a few more comments, if I may. So where are we? Love to Reef. I drove from Essex to Surrey some work, then to Essex. Love to Reef event. So come on, Luke. And I think Luke has said he's bought a ticket. I'm sure he said. Yeah, I'm sure he says.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
There we go. I bought a ticket. I'll be there on Saturday. You twisted my arm.
Good man.
Oh, good man.
Brilliant. So I look forward to meeting you there. Let's have a look. I'm just going down because what I want to do very shortly is come to you, Jeremy, and talk about Reef Builders and all that kind of good stuff. As you're on here, it would be rude not to talk to you. Okay. You should start your video with March's song as the theme tune. And now I'll tell you about that. That is my only live stream in a long time that's got a strike against it. I don't know why. If you saw that live stream, you would know exactly why with March. And I wrote it off because I knew after 30 minutes when he was going to explode if he didn't have his usual self. So no, I'm not going to start videos of that. But yeah, that was a funny one. Right, Paul, do you have a true effective way of completely removing vermitid snails from your system? If you can do that really quick, Paul, that would be appreciated. Don't want to get to John.
I'll be honest with you. I've had some success with the bumblebee snails, but the reality is when you get into a big tank, the best thing to do is crunch them with coral clippers and watch your wrasse muller them. You have to get in there. It's about manual. It's like pulling dandelions from a lawn. There's no easy way. It's elbow grease.
Fair enough. My bumblebees keep them at bay. I think the thing is putting things like bumblebees and stuff like with peppermint shrimps, putting those in your tank before you see signs of it, because then what they do, they take care of them. Therefore, they never get a chance to actually grow out, because trying to solve it after is a pain, isn't it, for most things, to be fair. Let's have a look. I'm just going down. The bumblebee snails, coral snow takes care. I've heard of that, but it takes a while to do that. I haven't experienced it, but I've heard about coral snow. I suppose it's kind of jamming up the ends, because obviously you can put glue on the ends and things like that. But as you say, if you've got a lot of those, that's quite a lot to glue. So, right. Okay. So thank you for that, Paul. I think everyone knows enough around the event. Looking forward to it. I know a lot of people in the chat, loads of comments, loads of people have bought tickets as well. So thank you for those that have already bought tickets, and we'll see many of you there. So, Jeremy, if I can come to you about yourself. Now, I remember reading your bio when we was putting together the last Love to Reef, because obviously you was there and you'd done a great presentation, and thank you for what you've done for us on the day. But there's a few people there. So do you want to just give us a kind of a little bit of a history about what you do, what you've been up to, that kind of thing? It's broad and deep, should we say?
I've done a lot of things.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, can I go now? No, I've been keeping fish 40 years. Started off with freshwater. I've been doing marines certainly since the mid 90s, and I've been kind of more heavily involved in it in the past 20 to 25 years. Worked in lots of shops. I worked at Paul's shop last week because he said he was short staffed. I think Dan's left, and I rang him up. I said, I'll come down, Paul, because and I want to link to this as well, because I love working in shops, and I was talking to Paul about it, and it can be really therapeutic, and I recommend it to people. We're talking about this whole mind thing, mental health. I get a certain peace from just algae wiping, feeding the fish, watching the fish, bagging the fish, etc., looking at the corals, and I recommend it. So if you've never worked in an aquarium store, just try it. Even volunteer. I will volunteer in my local store or anywhere else, just because I just love playing with all the animals. And it's, you get to work with hundreds and hundreds of fish, thousands of corals. It's a lifetime's worth in a single day. I highly recommend it. But anyway, back to my background. So I've worked, including Paul's, I've worked in 8 different stores now. I started quite late, really. I didn't work in my first store till about 2000, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I worked for Maidenhead and lots of things, and that was great. And I've worked for independents, and then more recently, I worked for PFK for I think 12 years in total. I still write for them now. So
that's Practical Fish Keeper, the magazine, isn't it?
Practical Fish Keeper magazine. I've written for them since 2002. And I got into writing books then as well. So I've written 3 books. And I ended up as editor of PFK. And when I was working for PFK, that's when I met Jake Adams at Reef Builders. And I'd meet him at shows like Interzoo in Germany. And he actually wrote for PFK for a little bit. We got him in as a marine guy. And we kind of, you could say we competed. We didn't really compete. He was like doing his own thing, and we were kind of, did freshwater as well. And that's where I know him from. And then I worked for Evolution Aqua for 5 years, and that's when I moved up north. And that's when I got involved in marine aquarium design. So they were a pond company, and they brought me in, and we did the EA Reef Pro range of aquariums. That was me. And then we got Octo on board, we got Kessel on board, and we got Aquaforest on board. So quickly we turned from being this koi company, high-end koi, to being marines as well. And one thing led to another, made lots of contacts. And then I decided I'd go freelance and started writing for, I think it was Marine Depot first, which is an American, a bit like Bolt Reef Supply, or like an e-commerce site over here. It was a big one. It used to compete with BRS, and BRS actually bought it out. And I used to write. I remember. Yeah. Well, before they got bought out, it's all clever now. You look back at it, because BRS had this amazing video channel, and they wanted to get into video and get into articles and stuff to kind of compete with them. But it actually had the right effect in that BRS were like, you're going to be a problem. We may as well buy you, kind of thing. So I worked at Marine Depot for a bit. And then I worked for Coral View, which is like a kind of a D&D version in America. They distribute Octo over there, and they've got the Hydros line and lots of different things over there. I did some writing for them. And then I got contacted by Reef Builders, because they were like, hey, Jeremy, we know you from the past. Hello, how are you? Why don't you write for us? We noticed you're writing for Marine Depot and Coral View. We want you to write for Reef Builders. I was like, great. So that's how it came about. And I worked with Jake for probably a year on and off, perhaps, just doing various articles, news articles like I used to do at PFK. And he made me kind of UK editor and then European editor. And Paul's right. He was super interested in the European scene. He used to go to Europe a lot. Paul's right. He was actually, I don't know if he was French, but he was certainly brought up in France as a kid and spoke fluent French. And not a lot of people know that. And then he moved to America. His mum moved him to America, him and his brother. And so I worked with Jake for probably 12 months. And then I got a call, a message one morning 2 years ago. It's nearly 2 years ago.
Wow.
End of October. I think it was October the 22nd. He passed away in 2022. And Paul messaged me and Brian from TMC and Steve Halls from Red Sea. And they all said, I'm really sorry. And I said, what do you mean? I was just off to work. And they said, Jake's passed away. And one thing led to another. And I went from being a kind of a 1 day a week for Reef Builders to the co-owner, then Ryan, saying, I need you to be the editor, but not interestingly, it was all tragic, but we basically talked about me taking it over while Jake was alive, because little did I know he was planning a family. So he wanted to take a back seat. He wanted to do the studio and the videos, and that's what he was getting into. And he wanted me to do the writing. And that one thing led to another. And 2 years later, I'm still there. So we think about Jake every day. It sounds cheesy, but especially with the 2-year anniversary coming up, I look at his stories every day. He wrote 6,000 or 7,000 news stories on Reef Builders. Wow. Immense. And just the impact that he had on the hobby. And it was difficult to get on with. God, I used to fall out with him all the time, and everyone did. Really stubborn guy. But when you look back, he was actually right about pretty much all his methods and, his passion. And so that's it. That's my kind of relationship with Reef Builders, and I'm still doing it today.
I think as a hobbyist, I loved when he moved into that studio and you saw it from the bare floor when he put the epoxy on the floor and just the building blocks and how he put that together. That in itself was I think it was a great experience to share. And then when he had the different tanks and the different themes and I suppose he had that space just to trial things that hobbyists wouldn't even think of doing, or if they think, you just wouldn't do because you couldn't do because you got one tank and that's all you can.
They called it his sandbox. They kind of like put it down a little bit, but that was his dream, and he was so passionate about it. And not a lot of people know this, but he actually lived there. He lived in the store cupboard there, and there was a brewery next door, and he was into his beers, and he slept on a mattress on the floor in the studio. And he'd get up super early. I know his wife, Windsor, and he'd get up at 7 a.m. and go, right, I'm off to play with the corals. And he'd do it 12, 14, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. He truly lived it. And whereas, most people buy a nice car, a nice house, any money he has, he'd get a backpack, pay for a flight, and off he'd go. Solomon Islands, you name it, New Caledonia, Indonesia with Vincent Chalice. Loved it. And that is, you've got to respect that, because it was 100% his hobby first, before everything. It was amazing.
I think the bit I love, the fact that you can go diving, you go and pick out the corals, and they're the corals that are then going to be shipped back through the kind of different routes, and you're going to put those into your tank. Because that to me sounds absolutely superb, that you could go and do that. So you're hand picking the corals that you want. That is just a kind of one-off, isn't it? Not many people.
And that was one of the things about the studio and his corals. Every coral had a story. So I was due to visit the studio in March. He died in October. And anyone who'd been, and Than had been there as well, good tie-in. Than was one of the last visits and last podcasts that Jake did. And he had a story about every single coral in that studio. He'd either hand collected or it had gone through Julian and Sanjay and Paletta, all these names, Tony Vargas, all these legacy corals that I was talking about in my talk at Love to Reef. And it's amazing. And the studio's still going, but it's just, people say, it's not the same. No, it's not. It's definitely not. And no one thinks they can be the same. He was huge and he did it all himself. So, you know, we're not trying to be Jake. We're just trying to keep it going. And obviously I speak to his wife, Windsor, you know, he's got a son. So, you know, he's got a wife and kid, and that's why we do it. That's why we get up every day and we keep Reef Builders going.
Yeah. There's a question here. Go on, Paul.
I was just going to say that when I found out, when I messaged Jeremy, I was 5 hours ahead or behind in Mauritius at the time. And I was with the Garobis, which were Jake had stayed with. Jake had actually, the morning that Jake died was the same morning I was standing in the same footsteps as Jake looking for zebra tangs.
Yeah.
And when he first, I mean, like Jeremy said, he never had any money because he spent it on flights and going everywhere. He used to get on the plane and he used to fly over to Mauritius, and he stayed in when Monica and the Garobis were started out, all they had was an off license and a small flat upstairs where the whole family shared this flat. And Jake slept on the floor just so he could go there to find the polys and the zebra tang. And that morning when we found out was the same morning that I was looking, and I messaged Jeremy, and I just couldn't believe it at first. The Garobis were in tears because he could speak French. Mauritius' first language, apart from their own sort of Creole style language, is French. So the Garobis and him, they got on really well. In fact, Monica stayed with Jake in his flat. I think he had a little flat once as well. But he was a very meagre man. He didn't have loads of money. He didn't have, because he'd spent it all on corals and going everywhere. He was just like any one of us again. He was just the same as any one of us. So you know.
Yeah, and Vincent spoke French as well. Vincent Chalice is French. He lives in Indonesia, so that's where Jake was off to. So unfortunately, he died on a flight out to see Vincent Chalice, to stay there for 3 weeks to do these amazing dives. Vincent, no one knows Indonesia like Vincent Chalice knows it, and he knows about reefs that no one else knows about, and they were off to dive these reefs. Tragic, really tragic.
Absolutely. There's a question there about, can we look forward to a future kind of Jake Adams style YouTube channel? Which, I mean, as you said before, to try and replicate that is going to be almost impossible, even if you wanted to, because you've got two different people who can't do the same channel, let alone someone who's got that reputation.
Yeah. I'm always, it sounds weird. I'm doing stuff with other people all the time. And I don't, you know, I've got a family myself, you know, it wouldn't be something, I mean, Paul could do it with his seahorses and his coral farm. You know, I mean, that is a studio, but it's not, you know, I am going to do more video work, definitely, because that's the way things are. You know, that's just the way that we consume media now. Even, you know, not many people read anymore. Not really. If you think about what we all do every night, myself included, I'm a writer. I just scroll on Instagram all night, the same as everyone else, you know, so that's the way things are. So yeah, I'll be doing more video, but it'll never be like Jake did. I mean, I can review stuff obviously, but not, you know, Jake, that was Graceland for me. That was Mecca. That was a very special place, and you know, I wouldn't want to try and imitate that in any way.
Absolutely. We've got here, Jake was the first person to write a paper on gyro flow long before it was ever a thing.
Yeah, he did flow at college, and he said because Sanjay was doing lighting at the time, he wanted to do something marine related that wasn't lighting, and he chose flow. And I think he did this talk, and he's certainly written about it, and everyone quotes it, where he said that flow was more important to corals than light. And everyone talks about that now still, and it makes sense because obviously you got corals in the deep sea that are in the dark. The one thing they can't live without is flow. Brings them their food, washes away their waste, their eggs, their sperm, etc. So he was right, you know. It's he lived his life quickly as well, and you know, I don't want to get all kind of philosophical about it all, but there are certain things that he did that made an impact that have stayed with us. And you know, he lived this amazing reefing life. He was only 41 when he died, and he achieved so much in such a little time, and he was only getting started. So yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. And you think about flow. So there was pelagic swimmer who you know quite well, or very well, Paul Robb. He put a video out today, and the thing that struck me, and I put the comments on there, was the amount of particles that are in the water. And then you can see how fast the water is moving. And to your point, you need the flow because they all feed off of those particles. And of course, a lot of that is waste and then flows on to something else that feeds
Well,
it. And that's what struck me about that video more than anything else was the particulars in the water. Yet people say they want a really clean tank with no particles in it. And I think that's not right.
No, corals feed on other corals' mucus, and in they're trapped within that mucus is often bacteria. I call it snot.
Yeah,
they actually feed on coral snot from other corals. So there's often food there'll be planktonic, there'll be bacterial mass, there'll be all sorts of
fish
things.
Species, everything.
Yeah, I think that Julian Sprung, to be fair, would be worthy of a mention here, because Julian identified this back in probably 92, 91 about how vitally important coral snot, as I call it, or snow is. Yeah. And within the snow, there is all sorts of stuff. Some of it's probably organic and some of it's sort of slightly inorganic. But, you know, you must have seen it before that when you feed your tank, say, with a food solution, you'll often the mesenterial filaments come out of stony corals and things like that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what particles, they'll trap them, you know. So make use of. So, yeah, I mean, it's not always, everyone always thinks that it's crystal clear. I mean, if you saw where a lot of these Australian corals are collected, you know, things like on the east coast, the little Trachyphylia, we're talking about, you know, massive sediments. As soon as you pick a trachea off the bottom, the divers pick a trachea up, there's big clouds of sediments and things like that. So very often our reef tanks, if we're trying to mimic that super clear crystal water, you know, that's really the fore reef. You know, that's where you're going to find that. But in lagoons, it will change all the time according to tides and all sorts, you know.
It's a really interesting point, Paul. And then people wonder why they don't do well with trackies, you know, and we've got roller filters and all the rest of it. And there's this guy local to me who keeps doing badly with them. And then they bring it into my LFS and it's getting stirred up all day in the coral trays. We're chasing fish and getting corals out. And I kind of observed it and I was like, this is the lagoon. You know, because we've got Amphius in there, we're feeding these fish like 8-10 times a day, stirring all this dirt up, and the trackies are loving it. Goes back in this guy's tank, you know, full roller filter, massive skimmer, you name it, crystal clear water. The thing starves again.
It out. And I was having a conversation with Paul last Friday. So I've got a war paint Scully, which are really rare now in the UK, and I've had it for about 9 years. And I started to see a little bit of the skeleton around the edge. And I was having a conversation with Paul about it. And he said about target feeding with mices, and usually it's after dark because you get the tentacles out and it's feeding. And I've only fed it about 3 or 4 times, and it's now puffed up exactly how it used to. And when I used to have a 5-foot tank here, but I used to have tangs and other stuff like that. So there's far more, to your point, loads of poo, loads of snot, and it's full with loads of coral. So that's probably the reason why it was doing well. So that's the point on that, where my tank is probably too clean, or there's just not enough particles getting to that scully.
And certainly for LPS corals, that is their niche on the reef, you know, the dirty bits. I mean, Vincent Chalice wrote an article for Reef Builders about Acanthophilia, and they basically live in the middle of a huge satellite dish shaped depression in the sand, and all the crud just very slowly goes down to the middle, and you've got one acantho that's just taking in all this slurry that's going down the sand into the middle. Really cool.
Absolutely. Right, it's got a few comments, so we'll go through the comments and then come back to you if I may. So where are we? AAC new coral lab and seahorse section is looking amazing. Yeah, I saw the picture today, Paul. It looks clinical at the moment, you would say, but it looks and I've seen it, it looks brilliant. I know it's not for public, but what will come from it, will it be hugely beneficial, Paul? So what's the kind of plan for that?
We've already, I mean, people don't, some things people know, some people don't. So already I've probably sold into the trade indirectly through wholesale. I've probably sold around about 300 seahorses already into the trade since I set off. There'll be, I mean, AAC sells some too, but it's like any store, we can only sell so many. So I'm now supplying TMC, and they'll supply shops and things like that with those. And then I'm looking at exporting as well to potentially Canada as well on the horses. I mean, the main drive with the seahorse thing really is that when you been so long in the trade as I have, and all you've ever done is sold life that you've took from, you know, the reef. My whole thing really was I needed to start teaching myself something where I could put something back in. I'm not going to solve the problem of the demise of these animals or the coral reef by any means, but you know, but it's my little bit. So before I sort of look at the idea of retiring or getting out, I need to start learning some skills now, some basic skills. With tropicals, I bred loads of tropicals, but freshwater. But with marines, I've never really contributed. You know, I've done plenty of fragging and growing corals and things, and that goes way back with soft corals, probably as early as 89, 90, when I first started messing around with toadstools and cutting them up and sharing the love, so to speak. But in terms of fish, I'd like to learn a lot more. And when you start with seahorses, if you like, are the guppies of the marine system, and marine trade as such. So this is the starting block. So really, there was a point in the UK up until recently where we nearly ran out of seahorses, erector seahorses. And the guy that really encouraged me to do this, Terry Evans of Wet Pets, he's 82, 84. He couldn't carry on, and now I know why, because it's an absolute full-time job. You know, breeding a few seahorses is fun. When you get into a commercial bait, it is non-stop, as Jeremy will tell you. They need, there's 8-9 feeds a day, 10 if you can. You know, water changes, glass cleaning, scrubbing, sterilising. I mean, it's a lot of work. And the reality is that in actual fact, I'll make absolutely no money at this for quite some time. Not if you do it on a professional basis. You don't set out to do commercial fish breeding knowing that you're going to make any money. To give you an idea, De Jong, right, where I visited their hatchery, I mean, I'm going to say they've put at least 1.5 million into their hatchery. And I guarantee that Tom, who's an absolute genius, hasn't seen 1.5 million quid's worth of return yet. Yeah. There simply isn't the volume or the number. But it's vitally important that we attempt this. As much as I'm pro captive breeding and aquaculture, we have to be mindful of the fact that somewhere, you know, we still need wild imports. Because as I found that with the seahorse strain that I inherited from Terry, seahorses have such a small genetic gene pool, is very, very quickly that things start to go wrong. And I started to see some deficiencies and some problems with some of the existing seahorse UK strain. So I had to very quickly bring in some new blood from Taiwan into their lives, even though they're not from that region. Of course, they're eastern seaboard, the USA. But I wanted to start. So basically, the whole idea is I'm teaching myself. So in terms of what do I get out of it? Not a lot at the minute in terms of financial, if that's what we mean, but a lot when it comes to the heart. Because ultimately, you know, not everything I do is about making money. So, for example, even that show, we won't make that money on that show. We might get some publicity, AAC. That's the benefit from it. But in terms of actually making money, all the way through, I've always given back to the hobbyist at some point, whether it's freaks, whether it's birthdays, whether it's this. There's always been. I've never bought a Rolex. I don't own one. You know what I mean? You know, I don't have helicopter like people think I do, you know, and all the rest of it. So we always give something back. So the Seahorse project at the moment is really a learning curve. I'm not even going to say I'm going to do it forever. This is a stepping stone for me. Yeah. And hopefully maybe I'll be breeding pink scooter blennies next year. Maybe I'll start looking at mandarins. Maybe I'll start. So it's a learning process. And hopefully as I go into retirement, just like Terry did from Wet Pets, that might be the area I go. So I've always got a foot in the trade, even if it's on a smaller scale. Yeah. In terms of the coral side of things, I mean, obviously the new building, it's not a public space, although we might open it on our birthday for people to have a look. We've been nagged, you know, just for people to look, but I doubt there'll be much in it because until I see spots of coralline algae growing, I probably won't be interjecting an awful lot of coral into the new unit. You know, I'm very patient when it comes to things like that. So it won't be a public space, but hopefully we'll have the odd open day. that should enable, having the separate space should enable us to give people what they want again, which is that they want me to sell corals online. It's not, there's never been a desire for me to do so, as you know, Paul, but I've been nagged to death about it for so long that a bit like Coral Freaks, actually, that I feel like compelled to do it. And plus I've got other people encouraging me trade wise to do it as well. But really, as I said, it's a new space. It's Paul's room. It's somewhere for me to hide and live out my last of my dreams before I hand over to the team, if you like. Yeah. So
Brilliant.
do it now while I've got the money.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hopefully that answers the question. Just going to go through a few comments here. Do you know you can get a reduction with your water bill if you tell them you have an RO system? I've heard of that, but I must admit I haven't looked into it. Of course, you use tons and tons of water.
It wouldn't happen here because I've got a land, because I'm a landlord. It's all supplied via the council. My bill goes to the council. Same with electricity as well.
Okay. What lights you got on the farm? Are they the pros or the blues? I'm assuming Radian they are, aren't they?
Yeah, pros.
Okay. Sense.
Paul likes it white, don't you, Paul?
I like it white.
Loves his white light.
I prefer white light. We were talking about it earlier on before we start. I must prefer the white light to blue. Blue has its place when it's going down. I like it because of the fish as well. You can see the fish better, can't you?
Well, you want a yellow tank to look yellow, don't you?
Well,
not orange.
Yeah, I suppose it does, and sometimes you look green depending on the shade of it. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't pop as much. Your corals pop, but your fish just look a bit blurred, don't they? I would say a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Good point. When is Paul going to do an MPS only tank? You've got an MPS only tank, haven't you, Paul? In the shop, unless that's video. He hasn't been in, obviously, has he?
He hasn't been for that long. He won't even recognise the place.
Absolutely. You've got pictures on Instagram and everything. Yeah. There we go. Someone say like that, the AAC coral snot. Your own food. Yeah. There we go.
That sounds good.
It does, doesn't it? You had a few names here for corals and also for your own brand of food.
Yeah.
The cube tank close to the till desk. Yeah, that's the Max Nano, isn't it?
Yeah.
Heavy in, heavy out for me. Absolutely. Paul, is that the soundproofing behind you that Fan has?
No, this is Joe's. Joe came up with this idea. He's got this in his house, and I loved it. Yeah. And there's something over here that I can't show you yet that I'm just in the process of doing at the moment. But there's no soundproofing on this. This is just those what they call feature wall or whatever like that. But there is a bit. But John's right. There is a little bit of fan. There it is.
You got a plant.
One of the things I loved about Fan's place is that it's like going into another world. It's just filled with like plants and clouds. And
I was about to say, have you got clouds yet?
I haven't. I'm yet to ask my because obviously obviously helped design it all. But Joe and Paul the builder put my dreams for me. They build those dreams that I have, and maybe I'll have to send Joe on a cloud course.
It's probably a YouTube video for, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just a roll of filter wool, isn't it? A few LEDs.
I think it's a bit, Jeremy, I'll make sure that you mention those words to Fan when he's over. It's just a few LEDs in a bit of filter wool.
Trust me, I'm going to say it in front of 200 people.
Yeah. Right, there's a question because someone's just reminded me. There's a question right earlier on around zoas. I think the question was, do you have a cure for zoopox?
Well, I'm not the best when it comes to zoanthids. I have to say I've never really focused my full attention on them. Hopefully I will do a little bit more soon. But I heard that actually a freshwater bath. Okay. But there are better people to ask. Laura, she'll know a little bit more about that than I will. I would suggest that potentially a fresh. I mean, certainly when I've had the Vietnamese shipments in, which are riddled with pests when they first come in. I mean, they're so filthy. Zoanthids are one of the dirtiest corals I've ever come across.
Yeah.
March is right. You must have really good water flow, despite what people think, and quite decent lighting. I would probably put that question to someone like Laura. I'm trying to think of the lady that's on Instagram that I see a lot as well. I can't remember her name.
I know the one you mean.
She's
sells
fantastic.
Loads of Zoas, doesn't she?
She's really good, actually. But Laura certainly, and there's a lady on Instagram, Jarek, who I can't remember right now. It'll probably
Is
come.
it Zoe UK or something like that?
Might be something so.
And also the guys at the show as well. Than might know. Pat might. Pat might know.
Actually, Pat will know about that actually at the show without a shadow of a doubt. They'll have more experience than I will with those, to be honest with you.
So that's a question for the show. And also, look, Laura's going, isn't she? She's going to be there on the.
Laura will be there.
So Jarek, so Laura won't be on stage unless she's persuaded to, which is what happened at the first Love to Reef, wasn't it? She went as a paying guest and ended up being in the
Q&A with me and Jed.
Absolutely. And what people still talk about today, about her talking about Goniopora and manganese. Because I've got to say, since I've been dosing manganese with Goniopora, other than that one that I had a bacterial infection, touch wood, I've been able to keep Goniopora. Maybe a coincidence.
I mean, Jarek, I would say that is a really good question. Would you say, Jeremy?
What's that?
To pose the question to the panel at the end. Maybe Jarek can use that as a question. Does anyone, I mean, it might be, even if we do get an answer for Jarek before then, I would suggest that Jarek actually poses that to the panel on the day. So
yeah. I mean, Pat's facility, you've been there, but, you know, this guy does it for a living, you know. He supplies the likes of Than, doesn't he?
No, he's Than's more because it's Canadian border. No.
Oh, right, because they're in separate countries.
But but Than, for example, deals with, I know one of the wholesalers is eye-catching corals, and I'm told that they're really great guys. I mean, they've got a football stadium.
You went there as well, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, but we weren't allowed to film there. But we're talking about a football stadium of corals, and they're about to do, I think it's something like another 4 million quid. Each row of tables is $1 million that they've got.
Wow.
And in actual fact, he's getting married soon. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's popping into London for 2 days, and then popping to France, and then popping to Italy. He's doing it, and I said to him, maybe pop by if he does. But eye-catching coral, wow! I mean, you could fit all of the UK, all of the German wholesalers, all into one place for that place. It's enormous.
Wow, that sounds it. Some other comments. Can you learn to breed bandit angels, please, Paul?
Come on, Paul.
Yeah.
When you've done that, I want a long fin albino one as well.
Yeah, okay, I'll try.
And someone says someone is breeding him, Luke. I think I saw it on Reef Builders for about 5K.
That'll be. There is someone in the Far East, isn't there, Jeremy? Yeah, Japan. But there's also Karen Britton in Hawaii. She was the first person to spawn them, I believe. Those impersonators. Yeah.
Paul, will you be doing a talk on pH and growing tomatoes?
Could do if need be.
And I've got one here where you do a talk on how to plant sausages. So the story behind this is, if you plant, so when my son got married on a Thursday, the thing, you plant a sausage in the ground the night before and it won't rain. And so we talked about that quite a bit. I couldn't put it in the ground because I've got a dog, so it's still in the greenhouse. I've got a pot with a sausage in it. So if you don't want it to rain the next day, plant the sausage.
I'll try that out next year.
Euphemism or something, planting a sausage.
Maybe I'll try that out next spring, summer when I'll start getting barbecue season on the go.
Yeah. So if you plant it, I've had great success. That's one person on one day. But
I'll plant a sausage for a reefing audience with.
We're inside, so it doesn't matter. But so that's the principle. It worked for me. That's all I can say. Oh dear. Sounds scientific. And So, Jeremy, in terms of Reef Builders, obviously been going for a number of years. How do you see it progressing, say, over the next year or so? What can we expect to see?
It's 20 years old now. The marketplace is a bit different now. I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but now there's like 1 million YouTube channels for everything, and it's a lot harder to get kind of noticed these days. But there will be a lot more video. Oh, here's one. I've got a bit of an exclusive for you. So Salem, the young science guy, really
great guy,
really into his biology and all that. I've heard a rumor he's moving to live in the Reef Builders studio. So that's exclusive. Now, it might not happen, but you heard it here first. No one knows about that. So if he lives there and works there and makes it his own, he'll be doing some crazy stuff with tanks and corals. He's really into the microbiome, really into eDNA testing, and he's going to be testing live rock and all these different things. So he's got loads lined up. So, you know, he could be the future of Reef Builders. You know, he's a young guy. He's only early 20s. He's a graduate. You know, I mean, we think he should go off and do a PhD, really. He's super clever. He's had job offers from like top, you know, like Pfizer have offered him a job. Do you know what I mean? And he's helping us in Reef Builders. So, yeah, he's got a lot to offer. And if we let him loose on that studio, then he will... he could bring a lot to it. He really could. So, yeah, he's a big part of it. Remy's like a professional radio host in America. And he's had big audiences. So he's a natural fit for the podcast. You know, he does that kind of thing for a living. And he's super keen as well. Really nice guy. There's loads of people. I mean, we got some new writers come in. But I think more and more video of lots of different things. You know how it is these days. You've got to do YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and everything just to kind of encompass everyone. But yeah, I think the Salem thing will be interesting if he goes to the studio.
I think that'd be brilliant. I think coming back to chat, it's really difficult to go across multiple channels.
Yeah.
Just to focus on one. And I think, the market is so saturated. If I think when we started this, so we're just over 3.5 years ago, there was hardly, other than the kind of the big boys in America, no one was really doing live streams.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and there was the kind of four of us, and then that was kind of how we cookie cut it. And there's even in the UK, there's loads of live streams around, and a lot of them are they'll delve into the detail and go pH and stuff like that. And we haven't touched upon that, as Paul said earlier. Our one is very much guys around the table just chatting. And that's how we started. And to be fair, my knowledge is okay to run tanks, but I couldn't go into the ins and out. And I've got, to be fair, no interest in that either. But it is so competitive, and there's so much to choose from as well. It's massive.
These big companies now, like Meta and Google, you know, I don't want to get too much into the nuts and bolts of it, but they can work against you as a business. So they view Reef Builders as a business, and they can shrink your reach. You know, they basically want you to pay these days, and you know, Reef Builders isn't about that. It's not a big corporation. So reach can be shrunk, which is really sad, you know, or held back when you've got really interesting things to say. So it's not going to be easy, because there's more channels than ever, more reef keepers than ever, more people can grow corals now, which is brilliant. But it's just kind of getting out there and trying to toe the line of truth. That's what Jake Adams always used to say to me: toe the line of truth, you know, give proper advice, and make sure you kind of do it right, really, and do it ethically and with passion as well, because he was super passionate. You know, he would ring me up. I put something on Facebook and go, right, I'm shutting my tank in the middle of the cost of living crisis. You know, all of us were just absolutely in pieces about our electric bills doubling. And one of the last messages he sent me, he went, Jeremy, I'm really sorry to hear about that. You know, let's try and get around it. And you know, that's what he was like with everyone. So it's super, super passionate guy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant. So
I think, sorry, I'm just going to say, I think with Reef Builders, I've always followed Reef Builders. And I think it's probably the most well covered. It's the best online magazine we've got. You know, we've got obviously our British magazine, Ultramarine, John Clipperton, which is fantastic.
I love that. It's really good.
But, you know, and John's a great guy as well. He's going to be coming as well, and he's going to be covering the event. But, you know, Reef Builders, what I really liked about it is Reef Builders, they need sponsorship. So they have to take funds in order to perpetuate this, right? But Jeremy and Jake as well, if something's really shit, right, they will say, yeah. And Jake had a little wayward words, you know. I'll never forget about the, you know, I'll never forget when. So Ecotech once gave Jake a Radian, and they gave him the prototype, and it was great. And then it changed within that next design build, and he said so. And yet they were very, very much part of financing Reef Builders. I mean, I don't want to throw too many figures because it might be Chinese whispers and bull, but I heard figures of like £70,000 and £90,000 and things like that. But so that's really risky. When you're an editor, you've got to be careful because you want to tell people the truth, don't you, Jeremy? Yeah,
absolutely.
Jeremy's unlikely to talk about something if it's total shit. He's not going to be persuaded by the sponsors to be able to do it. If it's bad, he will say. Yeah. And that's the thing about Reef Builders. It's did you say toeing the line of truth? Did you say, Jeremy, that Jake said?
That's what we used to say.
Yeah, and that's what makes Reef Builders number one. Is that if you get into another, and the other thing I like about it is some of the people over the years. I love Kai Lemon Tite. Kai. I mean, I'm obsessed with what he does. He's the ultimate ichthyologist. And now, as Jeremy said, now we've got Salim coming on, Salim, and he's just mind blowing. I mean, he's the future. So
he's like my little Luke Skywalker. He's my little Padawan, but he's already far more powerful than me. But you get what I mean. He's just, but he talks the truth, and it's gonna, we've made some really difficult decisions. There's stuff that he finds out using this eDNA technique that people don't want to hear, and companies especially don't want to hear.
So what is it briefly? What does it?
Think of it as an ICP test for bacteria. Right. So, they'll sample the water or the rock or the sand and take the biofilm, and they'll send it to a university. And this machine, an ICP machine's like 100 grand. An eDNA machine's like 5 to 10 million. It's not.
Wow. So different level and then some.
No. And it's got to be a university that does it, and the guy who does it has got a PhD, and it's all very clever stuff. But it's amazing, in fact, they're using it in the UK for basically you can take a sample of water from a lake or a pond, and it'll tell you every organism that's in there, right? Every insect, every fish, every amphibian. And so they're using it in Britain to find out if eels are in a lake, if great crested newts are in there, and you'll never see them. And they're using it on coral reefs to find out what animals are on a reef. And so you can go, right, a tuna swam through here. This has lived here. This lives here. This lives here. But with things like bacteria, you can test what bacteria is in bottled bacteria. You can test what bacteria is on live rock. And importantly, it can test diseases as well, which rightly or wrongly is a bit much more than our hobby can handle, because it might just find out that all fish have got disease because they come from the wild. It might just find out that live rock might bring something in. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think we know that every fish store that's ever existed on the planet, which I don't know, has uranema in it, Jeremy. Is that right? Possibly.
In the tests that I've seen, I mean, the example is, so Remy, the guy I talked about who does the podcasts and the videos, he set up a brand new tank, and one of his first fish was, I think it was a green chromis, and they tested it, and straight away he had uranema in his tank, and he's got uranema forever now. That's that. So I almost don't want to know that. Do you know what I mean? Just like with ICP testing, when you're chasing numbers with ICP, this is going to be the new number chasing. It's going to do your head in, because, you could have the best tank in the universe. You could do an eDNA and it could tell you you've got loads going on, loads of bad pathogens, loads of bad bacteria. So I'm not sure we're ready for it as a hobby or an industry.
Be careful what you wish for, because then as you chase numbers, you then go chasing other stuff that's been there for years and it may not ever surface to cause a problem.
Exactly. And you were talking about pulling your hair out, Paul. I mean, this is going to be a disaster. You might think you got a perfect tank behind you. It might be riddled with stuff.
Well, it is riddled with stuff, but it's the stuff I know. But absolutely, then you got a whole shopping list of other stuff, and you're thinking, why do people leave the hobby for what they see, let alone what they don't see, and might never ever happen? And that's the thing. Exactly. Some things don't, do they?
Exactly. So sometimes, like with this tank, I've only had it set up a couple of months, and I'm just trying to keep it simple, and just observation is key. I look at the corals, I look at the fish. I haven't even ICP'd it, because I just don't want to get into the, then I'll have to go and get my KH manager out. Then I'll get on the elements. Then I'll do this. Then I'll do that. And then I'll get all the, 0.1 mil of, chromium. And no, not this week, not this month, not today. I've done that. So maybe for another tank.
I totally agree with you. I went over the top when I had dynos and doing loads of stuff. And I actually then went back and said, no, back to basics, salinity, water changes. And the tank is the best it has ever had. I'm not dosing. I'm just doing a 5, and a 10 litre change a week, 20%. I've got a skimmer because I do add a little bit of bacteria to it. And that's it. So I think you're right. Keep it simple. Look at, does it look good or not? And that goes a long way, doesn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Let's have a look at some other comments. There's lots of talk about sausages, and I'm not going to go into some of those comments from people like Drippy because I know not to go then. Right. Okay. I only found these live streams through AAC and Pulse. Thank you for joining. Yeah. To be fair, we haven't really promoted them. We just go on a stream on a Friday night and have a chat. We don't even I haven't even put tags on or anything like that for those. It's just about enjoyment. But yeah, thank you for watching. And when you stop, Paul, there'll be one less. I think other people will take the Friday slot. The Friday slot is a prime time for the UK market, so I think it will be filled from elsewhere, Hayley, when we stop. So thank you. And Hayley's looked after this for quite a while from an admin point of view. And if there's any trolling or anything like that, which a touch wood I've never had, Hayley's in there to step in. Where are we? What else have we got? Yeah, so originally we was going to do the last one tonight. That's moved to next week, and so we quickly got Paul and Jeremy together to get on the stream because obviously we wanted to talk about the coral freaks in 2 weeks. Hence why there's no one else other than myself on this evening and the two gents. Yes, next Friday at. I said last farewell Friday stream next Friday, and TB calls on at 10 a.m. Absolutely. Question for Jeremy: was there anything that Jake hated about the reefing hobby?
Illegal corals,
automatic testers. His T-shirt that said "I am the controller." There was lots of things he hated. He hated loads. He's quite an angry guy Jeremy? When I speak to him.
Do you remember Jeremy? He hated the illegal market, didn't he?
Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, and he knew quite a lot about it. I showed him a picture of a mushroom once, and he said that's from the Philippines. It's smuggled, and I was like, okay, yeah. But no, he kind of did. He kept it simple, and there was this kind of Jake Adams method. He was still into Kalkwasser, definitely. He strongly believed in the importance of pH. And the things he used to say to me, the 3 most important things for corals were salinity, pH, and temperature. You know, whereas us Europeans, we go, oh, it's KH, calcium, magnesium. And I think there was a comment there about ICP testing. He wasn't bothered about that. He was number 69 because he knew Isan from Triton. They went to Indonesia together, etc. He was the 69th Triton tester in the world. But he didn't chase numbers. He chased pH, but he didn't chase like traces.
I know, Paul, we've had a conversation about salinity around a lot of experienced people don't check salinity, and then it creeps up on them, and actually then you end up with a problem with salinity.
Yeah,
and that's always kind of stuck with me.
In my 20s by Terry Evans, like it was just a derogatory term. If I ever tell you to go home and check your salinity, it's because you're talking shit and you haven't even looked at the basics. And it was said to me when I was in my 20s by my guru. And he said, Paul, I was talking to him about something, I don't know, strontium or this.
Yeah.
And then he went, look, Paul, just go home and check your salinity and then come back, you know. And the truth is, at the times it catches people out, particularly old school reefers, people have done it for years. They don't ever think of this simple stuff. The more experience you gain at, newbies, new hobbyists are way better usually because they're so on it. They want to make sure they get it right. But as you get long in the tooth, it's the little things that will catch you out.
And the thing is, that's not a little thing, is it? So you've got all the other measures and everything else, and it's not. But it's the you could argue is the number one. Heat may be the number one. You know, depends on where you're at and flow. I mean, but
excessive salinity is diabolical for a lot of species. But low salinity means all your numbers are out. You know, we talked about not chasing numbers, but you know, obviously low salinity means low calcium, low DKH. And of course, if you end up pushing your carbonate hardness to match, you know, chase that number between 7 and 8 or 9, whatever, 7 and 8 or whatever you're doing, right? Ultimately, if your salinity is low, you're now like really 9 or 10, you know. And then of course, if you're very low on nutrients, the next minute you've got tip burn and you know, that sort of thing. So you need to be really, you know, really easy. I would agree with Jake in actual fact, because pH is a reference to really that buffering capacity of the system, you know, and gives a sort of real-time answer to many problems. But, you know, then in the same breath, there's many ways to grow a reef tank. And I actually believe in some of my previous growing techniques that having a slightly depressed pH means that there's more available carbon dioxide in the water. If you've got heavy nitrogen and some phosphate, that in turn will grow corals quicker. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way to grow corals. So if you want to rush corals, you might actually want slightly depressed pH, because that will mean that there was more CO2 present, right? Or potentially. So that's how I've always done it in the past. I never used to chase pH. My average pH used to be about 7.8, 7.9. You know, now I've tried it. Yes, you will see more polyp extension at 8.4. That doesn't really 8.3s and 8.4. It doesn't necessarily mean that the corals are growing any better. So it's the same as if you think about, I know there was a comment about tomatoes, right? That's probably because I've used it in the store. But, you know, corals are relatively simple animals that utilize a process of photosynthesis. And in order to keep corals growing well, we need to encourage more zooamphili. And to make sure the zooamphili is helpful. And in order for that to take place, we know, you know, just like any algae or plant of any description, carbon dioxide is king, along with nutrients. So I wouldn't necessarily, I've played with Catwasser for years, you know, and often what you see is initially when you play around with Catwasser is an almost rapid growth, and you get sharp tips on your corals, but that don't mean that they're growing as they would do in nature. So, you know, it's very, you know, hydrodynamics is a major part on coral growth. You know, water flow particularly, and how a coral structure grows. But I reckon we'll go full circle. You watch this space. I reckon that eventually people will stop worrying about their pH so much. That's what I think.
But what you're saying, Paul, it isn't just the case of 7.8. What you're saying is other parameters that need to be lined up.
Yeah,
because
there's
someone
no
might
right
go away
way.
and say 7.8 or 8.4, but there's other things that go around it that need supported, like high energy tanks. You need a lot of stuff lined up with flow and heating and nutrients and in and out, and also you need the whole ecosystem to be aligned, don't you?
There's no single right way to grow a reef tank. Everyone will have their own pathway. So, for example, it may well be that polyp extension is really important to you. So, yeah, maybe you'll see, you know, that higher pH is important to you. Yeah. But, you know, remember on the reef, polyps are not out every single day, in the daylight hours. It's very rare.
They're in.
All the snorkeling trips I've been on.
Yeah.
They've all the reason why acros and stony corals have these sharp skeletons is so the polyps can hide amongst them, so they don't get trashed by the fish. Yeah, and it's at night time that we see these polyps extend very often. So in terms of growing corals, I actually think that at the moment everyone's so hyper focused on pH and Catwasser, but we've been there before. You know, combining the reason why Catwasser was a very useful tool, particularly, is with calcium reactors, which used to exhaust carbon dioxide, which meant a depressed pH. And the idea being that Catwasser would balance that out. Yep. But you're not. But the reality is, I mean, I'm experimenting at the moment with pH plus and elements and things, and I'm very happy with it. And you know, but let's not forget, 2-part solutions are not new either. Julian Sprung had a product called Sea Balance, which was out in about 1987.
Yeah.
So, you know, we mustn't forget that a lot of the stuff that we're looking at now isn't new. It's just is new?
I mean, ozone's old, UV, protein. I've got an old book. We were talking about it, Paul. I think it was the Graham Cox book, and they refer to it as a urine skimmer.
Yes.
Protein skimmer.
Yeah. I mean, skimmers,
like 60s, 70s.
I'll tell you something that's a real difference. So I'm actually thinking of setting up a tank soon at home where I used to raise baby seals in it, and I'm not going to use anything at all other than air.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to do. right? Because the true
air powered skimmer.
I might,
Or...
yeah, just air stones and possibly a polyfilter, just to absorb or a little bit of activated carbon. It's the only thing I'm going to use to grow. I'm not saying it's going to be the world's greatest stony coral reef aquarium as we see today, Instagram worthy, but anyone can keep a basic marine aquarium as long as we accept the limitations of the system that we're using. So at the moment, I want to prove to people they do not need to spend thousands and thousands of pounds to have fun in the hobby. That's my next mission that I'll be doing probably from home. So, you know, when you've got all the
so
toys,
cheap as well.
Yeah. Well, when you got all the toys like I have, in the end, you start looking at all the simple stuff. And I think that's in the spirit of Jake as well. Jake would be with me on this because those of us out there that have done it long enough know that all we really need is rock, live rock ideally, circulation, and some bright lights. That's all we really need, you know, and it's what you do and understand that water management. So inevitably humans always want to put way more fish in a glass box than we should.
Yeah.
If we accept the limitations of the system we buy, you can have a great tank for little or no money, you know. So, but I think at the moment I reckon we'll go full circle. This pH thing's a bit of a craze at the moment. And even Chris, I've been over to see Chris at ACI, and I've stood there. I said, "You're mad. He's just dumping loads of shit in it like that. Let's just dump it in."
It's the Americans, isn't it?
You know, but that's what they're like. You know, let's get a bucket of fish. Let's get a bucket of cat. Let's throw it in a tank. I mean, Chris will debate. We won't fall out with one another about it. It's just that I don't believe that's the right way. You're displacing a lot of irons by doing that. So
it's interesting though, Paul. I remember. I think I remember you using Kaltwasser. You had a Deltec Kaltwasser reactor at Home Marine on that amazing tank.
Yeah. I
remember it stirring.
Yeah, I even actually went back to Kaltwasser not that long ago because I thought I'd give it a go again.
Yeah,
so
on display, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually used a stepper motor actually this time rather than because originally it was always about evaporative top up. Now I've been using a small stepper motor and I was dosing Kaltwasser. And I think there's a point. I think Kaltwasser's got some useful benefits. I mean, the idea of it being an alkaline solution and neutralizing fish urine and waste. So if you've got a really heavily stocked fish system that's got a lot of corals in it, ultimately, you know, if you've got a load of fish, the fish are excreting uric acid into the system every day. So it's a bit like cat litter. If you imagine cat litter, yeah, Kaltwasser can work like that as well. And some of that organic waste, but and maybe improve a little bit of skimming in so many words as well. But I don't think that Kaltwasser or any of these new products we see, even though I sell them, are necessarily the be all and end all. We're still not there yet. And the fact that we're actually just like fashion, seeing things going round and round in circles is exactly how this hobby is.
Well,
you know,
reef keeping's more guilty of the fashion game than anything with supplements and brands. I mean, you know, we all buy product X the one year and shun the other one. Then we buy product Y, then Z. Then we go back to product X again. Then we throw it all out. And I think BRS.
I mean, what about corals? I mean, look, mushroom anemones. We're mushroom rocks now.
I love leathers.
On the export market, a mushroom rock nowadays, say a beautiful red mushroom rock, well covered, it's a fortune for us to buy it now.
Really?
Straight. Yeah.
Wow.
Because they want to sell it by the leaf, by the mushrooms, because they're not finding them like they used to anymore, as well. So, you know, certain corals that were like, I used to sell a whole red mushroom rock less than 15, 20 years ago for about £30 that would have about 20 mushrooms on it. Right nowadays, a red, you know, decent quality red discosoma would be anywhere between £15 and £25 a polyp.
I couldn't give them away when I didn't know.
Yeah, and you used to get blastomusa colonies and acan colonies. You couldn't count the heads. There would have been 200 heads of acan. Yeah, everything. I mean, coral fashion is what is the. If you said to me, "What's the thing you hate the most about?" is coral fashion. Yeah, I really hate that because we're looking at it as trophies again. And then the idea is I can see the beauty in any animal. Yeah. You know, I love corals for what they are, irrespective of whether it's trendy. But I see hobbyists come into the store. They've got to have a dragon soul torch coral because their friend's got one.
why not just have a torch coral? You know what I mean? We've created our own worst nightmare and it isn't down to dealers, you know, the hobbyists who determine supply and demand. So when zoanthids, you know, as I knew them, button polyps became named, then all of a sudden we've got, but people like collecting, and I understand that too. There is a Pokemon card collecting thing, a top trumps collection thing, but when we do that, when we make Holy Grail torch corals what they are, that means straight away you've just kissed goodbye to your wallet, because as soon as there's a demand on one species, you know, and that worries me a little bit as well from a species exploitation point of view. That, you know, if, for example, scollies that you mentioned, Paul, you know, there was a time when I used to buy a scolly trade for about 60 quid, 70 quid. Well, those days are long gone now. They're over. Yeah. So, you know, and then they became so hot as such that it came to a point where they weren't finding as many master grades anymore. And I worry about over collection, particularly when corals become trendy. If we was to look at the whole, you know, if we went to a fruit and veg shop and only bought mangoes, then the geezer can only sell mangoes for 4 times as much, if you understand that. So, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question, where is it? How far out can salinity be before you step in?
It can't be. This is the fundamental. This is like Jake said. Yeah, actually, I mean, yeah. Whereas I would say you could mess around with alkalinity as low as 6.5 and as high as say 8.5. Some are 9, some are 10s. I know, but that's the range. You've got a large range there. When it comes to salinity, you just can't. But there's a mean average. All as reef keepers, we're told, according to salt manufacturers, that we should have 35.5 ppt. Well, that's even bullshit, because you know you can be, you know, because it's true, isn't it? Because the Red Sea, well, the Red Sea is not 35.5 ppt.
The Red Sea is a saltier sea. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we go into inshore areas in, say, Indonesia, for example, we might be dropping as low as 1.024, depending on how mountainous it is, 2-3, you know, and we might even be as low as like 18. I mean, where I was in Mauritius looking at zebra tanks, the salinity was 1.015. Yeah, you know, I was seeing the salt melt as it's coming in, and it was only a mile off the reef. So, you know, where it depends on how mountainous a region is, it will depend upon. So where the mangrove areas are, for example, that salinity can rapidly change every day. But as a guide rule, I've always been happy from a chemistry point of view at 1.025 SG, which is 30.
That's the one that I've always been told. Probably
and there's a reason
more than anyone else.
Well, there's a reason for that, because it gives you a little bit of leeway. If you go over 35.5 ppt, I'm still old school. I was talking SG, but that is 1.026. If you go 1.02728. And then you run out of top-up water, you're now at 30. Now we've got animals that are potentially suffering. We've got less oxygen in the water, for starters. That's the first most important thing.
You've got to think about the fish as well. Fish actually don't like it salty.
Yeah.
Even saltwater fish.
You're absolutely right, Jeremy. I've seen a lot of marine fish are far happier at the very... So when I first started on my journey, if you look at some of the early books, they will tell you 1.022. Yeah, so most of us kept marine tanks at 1 point. No, for all of it.
What, for all of it? So 1.022 was a kind of standard back in the day.
Yeah, right. Instant ocean, tropic marine back in the day. The first salinities that we were quoted were at SG were 1.022s. In fact, many wholesalers still to this day are operating at about 1.02122 anyway. Right, and there's no real reason for that, except for perhaps like my fish system next door, for example, runs at around about 1.023. I'll keep it as a happy medium. There's a reason for that. We can get more oxygen in the water, for starters. So which means we can have more fish in a tank. Yeah, and the lower we go, the more oxygen we can. Because of course, if you imagine the higher the level of salt, means the more solid a substance salt water is. The denser
it's more energy to breathe.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it affects our kidneys as well, doesn't it, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. Something along those reasons. Yeah.
The way that saltwater fish they constantly drink and they're constantly dehydrated. And that's why when they're sick, hyposalinity can help.
Whereas freshwater fish, if I'm right, Jeremy, constantly exude water from their bodies. Is that right?
It's osmosis, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what makes the ultimate. So for me, the ultimate fish on the planet, or one of them is, but there's a word that Jeremy will know, but I've forgotten it, is a salmon. Because a salmon can turn from a freshwater species to a saltwater species. That's like you going up to Mars and back.
And back again. But
back again.
Amphidromus, I mean, you call it what you want, but the term, some shrimp can do it as well. Amphidromus, so they can go out to sea and they can come back. And like you say, Paul, the effect on the body of the fish must be absolutely phenomenal.
Well, that's what I said. It's like going into space without a spacesuit.
Absolutely right. I think that answers the question. Thank you for that. Right, we are out of time. I just want to go through these comments and then I'll let you gents go. So where are we? I remember when your display tank didn't go above 7 DKH, and I remember I used to run the 5 foot at 7 all of the time.
Natural seawater, nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. I know people go to 8 because you've got a bit more give, but I've had 7 and it's gone down to about 6, like you say. But if it's slow coming down, everything seems to do okay. As long as you catch it and then you gradually put it back up to that level, I think that's okay. There we go. About tomatoes, hour and a half chat about growing tomatoes in your shop, Paul. I will never forget it.
Just trying to simplify things.
Absolutely. I wonder if asking all the speakers about their parameters would be interesting and how different those opinions would be. That's a good debate.
It'd be interesting speaking to that lot about Kelpwasser as well. I know Than uses it. Cheap.
Okay. Yeah, we've got some things there. There we go. I always look at my tank an hour after the lights out and now can't see hardly any bristleworms. Should I be worried?
No,
I've always found bristleworms, they regulate depending on what I suppose the predators. Yeah.
If you've got loads of bristleworms, if you put food in and loads of bristleworms come out, you're overfeeding. They come out for food, they smell it. Yeah.
100% agree with Paul's statement. My Evo, I stripped the filtration out. I just have a wave maker, a bit of live rock, not even a substrate. Absolutely. Danny's Aquarium is basically, so that's another YouTube channel that people may be familiar with. Really big channel guy. I think he's in Germany and he's had really simple tanks with hardly any filtration. I think he relies purely on water changes. I don't know about his latest one, but previous ones.
Is that the Dutch guy, young lad?
Was it Dutch?
Yes, he is.
Is it Dutch? Sorry. Yeah.
He just set up an 8 foot. Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Apologies, not German. He does things really simple. He's been going for a while as well. So a really good channel, actually. We are guilty of trends with our use of social media. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of the pictures you see on Instagram, they look good, but you do wonder if there's underlying problems. Because I can make this tank look absolutely brilliant on Instagram, and I've still got algae and I've got some bubble algae and stuff like that. So I don't always take it with a pinch of salt.
You've got to watch the people on it as well. They don't call them influencers for nothing. You know, if they're being paid to promote products, you know, they're going to tell you something's brilliant. And I wrote an article about Instagram once because I reckon it made me feel mentally ill. Seriously, I spent months, I think it was during lockdown, and there was this thing years ago, you guys will remember it. They said about young girls being negatively affected by beauty magazines back in the day, you know, when it was magazines and not online. And, you know, all young girls wanted to aspire to be like a skinny supermodel. And I wrote this article for Reef Builders saying the same thing about tanks. So you go on Instagram, the way the algorithm works, it's all about beautiful tanks. You type in aquarium, you'll get an aquascape. You know, you type in reef tank, you'll get Andrew Sandler's reef tank. Do you know what I mean? It's not, there's no normal, there's no community tank, there's no basic, there's no algae, there's no pests. It's the super beautiful, super outstanding, rich stuff. And that made me feel bad about my tanks. And I've got experience. And I looked at mine and I was like, I may as well just bin it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's rubbish. It's rubbish compared with every tank on Instagram. And I think that's a bad thing.
I agree. Because also blue hide stuff as well. I remember, so Ross, who used to be on the channel, he kept his tank fairly blue and he had some issues and he put the lights onto white and found out loads of algae. but he didn't know he had that algae because it was blue light. So all you got to do is put some blue and it masks some stuff. And if it had been white, he probably would have found it earlier. It took him ages to sort the problem out. So it hides things that white light would just exposes things, but also it doesn't look as nice, arguably, because you can see all the ugly bits. But for me, that's part of the reef.
And all of the different filters you can use, and the pure white sand is always a giveaway. It's been in there 24 hours or whatever, and Paul will know. You look at some of these tanks and go, they're going to sting each other. Those corals are going to sting each other. They're bunched right up next to each other, and it's all not
I think
fake.
people forget as well. Just, I know we got to go, but I've been on loads of reefs, and trust me, there's a lot of algae on them. There's a lot of pests. There's a lot of dead corals.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pests on them. There's a lot of everything on them. You know what I mean? Reefs are not perfect. They are forests. They're the rainforest of the sea. There is something eating one another as we speak right now. And, reef tanks are not perfect, and nor is the coral reef itself. It's constantly evolving, changing, and trying to kill each other.
Well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think you're right. People do, and that's probably where, back in the day with Zawas were really popular. That was really before Instagram. So you can blame social media, which you can do, but even before that, there was still trends, wasn't there? It just seems to be more in your face and more prominent now than it's probably ever been. Not just in reef keeping, but in life generally, isn't it? Around you've got to have that life, and that's perfect, and blah blah blah. And damn right, it's not. It's not. It's just that it's a veneer, isn't it?
Yeah, and even the style of tanks, they've all got the negative space aquascape. That they're all immaculate. Everything about him is immaculate, and it's not true.
No, and it shouldn't be either, because have a healthy tank, you need all that stuff in it, don't you? You need a little bit. Well, people say you don't need algae. I think it helps if you've got a bit of algae. Fish.
The worst thing is fish. When people want a good head of fish, and they've got this negative aquascape with a little bit of rock, with a little bit of coral sticking off the end of it, like that, and they've got all this undercut like that. When they put tangs in it, they're all fighting. Yeah, the fish are under pressure. It's no wonder we see so many disease issues with fish these days, because first of all, live rock, of course, help potentially create that balance of parasites and everything. But ultimately, reef fish need reef to hide in.
Yeah, you need to break that line of sight, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then they can hide, and it takes the stress away. And as you say, they're stressed. Well. Yeah. Absolutely, you take the stress, and their slime goes, and then obviously they can get the disease, amongst other things. That's probably an oversimplification, but that's my understanding.
Stress is a big factor.
Absolutely, and as you say earlier on, all that stuff from the test, the DNA tests, all that stuff just sits there asleep, waiting for a victim, and they're weak, and bang, off they go. So
absolutely. That's
kind of, because everyone's probably got ick and all those kind of things, but if fish are healthy, there's a good chance it won't surface, from what I know anyway. But there we go. Right, let's go through a few more. I love Duncans. I think Duncans are a brilliant coral.
I've got some in there.
They're so nice, and they're also
solid ones.
Yeah, I've got one at the back.
They were a dream coral. They were absolutely unobtainable for 20 years of my career. We only dreamed of Duncan Samia axifuga, which is now, of course, has changed its name, Jeremy. What's its name now, too? What's its name?
Well,
is it under Turbinaria now, isn't it? Or Turbinaria?
Yeah, I don't know if axifuga is, but Turbinaria palmata is now Duncan. Yeah, sorry, it's the other way around, Paul. Yeah, Turbinaria palmata is now Duncanopsamia, but
I remember Julian Sprung getting his little one bit of it. The first, we were all green with envy, and nowadays people just take Duncans for granted.
Well, I've got a story about that. We covered the first one in the UK when I was at Practical Fish Keeping. It was a shop in London, and David Saxby rocked up to look at it as well while we were covering it.
I know the coral it was.
Yeah,
I know it.
And it was
£4,000.
Yeah, and we stood there, and Practical Fish Keeping are there with me and the photographer, and David Saxby turns up in his Rolls Royce to look at this coral, and he said, "How much? I'm not paying that for it." And we all just walked away.
It was STM. It was. I think it was when Jez worked with John Bryden from H2O Aquatics at STM, and they had a colony of one of the first big colonies to hit the UK. It was about this big, so I suppose bigger than a dinner plate, and it was £4,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's before fragging it, so no one looked at it and thought, I can break that up.
No one thought they could, take off loads of bits.
Because they're easy, aren't they? That's fine. And Paul, when we was in Dijon 2 years ago, I remember him saying that Duncans was it illegal to import into the EU? So we had 2 or 3 coral trays full of Duncans. And I'm thinking, why has he got Duncans? They're 10 a penny.
The EU, so whereas we're not allowed certain things and all the rest of it, they're not allowed certain things.
Yeah.
So Duncans were, which is ridiculous, because if you talk to Shane Danger Coleman, as Jeremy does, he will tell you that there are they're like weeds where they grow. There's no shortage of Duncans corals in the wild habitat, but for whatever reason, the EU and their red tape for some reason can't have them. Whereas for us, it's other species. We can't have Hophilia australis at the minute, from the east coast. Whereas they can have them. It's just there's so much stuff out there, red tape wise. I wouldn't even want to start on all that.
No, me and Paul could go on for ages. But just one thing about the scollies. So we're the only country in the world that isn't allowed scollies from Queensland.
Yeah,
they just go elsewhere. 1,000 scollies a week go to China.
Yeah,
it's not solving it. It's not a collection ban. It's the UK going, quite rightly going, show me the evidence that it's not detrimental. So we're well ahead of the curve in terms of what we're asking for. But there you go.
There's another story. That's another debate, that one.
I can imagine. Right, I'm just going through the comments before we finish, and I think we're about there. Apologies if I've missed anything. I think we're done. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for staying over time, because it's 10:15. Paul, thank you as always. Jeremy, lovely to catch up again since some love to Reef, and look forward to catching up with both of you in 2 weeks. Next week is our last live Friday, the guys, so we'll be on then. Yes, thank you. And then the week after that, we are off to AAC. We're off to Coral Freaks, aren't we? So thank you everyone for watching. Really, really appreciate your time on a Friday night. I always say this because there's loads of things and loads of places you can be, but you choose to be us. So really appreciate that. So for now, everyone, have a great weekend, and hopefully see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.